Okay, this is episode 68 of Summoning Insight. As always, with all my shows, sponsored by Alpha Draft. The thing about Alpha Draft is, some people might think to themselves, is money everything in life? I mean, obviously it's not, right? I mean, this is not me saying that, remember, it's some people. I think it's everything, it's the main quest of life. Some people, though, very naive people with dreads who live in Sedona would say, that's some money, man, it isn't everything, like, there's more important things in life, like philosophy and like good vibes and spirituality and stuff. So they'd say, like, don't just go for money, but think about the reality of life. Life's all about money. You need to have money to exchange for goods and services and to do anything awesome. If you want to buy League of Legends champions, you need money, or to have like 7 lifetimes to invest into the game to get all the champions and the runes and shit. So you definitely need money. So if you need money, you could probably play Alpha Draft and win the money there. And you probably think to yourself, right, okay, but what if I lose the money there? Well, even the people who were telling you before money doesn't matter, well, they were kind of right in a way, because you can't take money with you when you're dead. So when you're dead anyway, the money's gone anyway. Like, eventually you either have to spend it, or someone else gets the money for free from you in an inheritance and spends it anyway. So my question to you is, do you want to play Alpha Draft, or do you want to save money, like do a really good job, be really, really frugal, and then have your little cousin who inherits the money in like 60 years, he'll just spend the money on Alpha Draft. So all I'm saying is, it's a race to spend the money on Alpha Draft. Someone, somewhere, eventually is going to spend this money on Alpha Draft. So I would say, just make it you. It's up to you, though. You can choose who it is. Is it your cousin, or is it you? I think that's got to be one of my best commercials ever. So we'll start the episode now. But by the way, as a disclaimer, it's technically not true that eventually someone will spend all the money on Alpha Draft, but it sounded good. See, basically, Monty, all my commercials are just a very low level of sophistry to trick young people who don't understand how the economy works.
Yeah, I know. It's all a scam to corrupt the youth of today into gambling ways.
Yep. But then again...
You told me that was the most attractive part of the deal, was corrupting the youth from around the world.
Yeah. No, it's because I actually took it from you, Monty, because you told me, like, I found this very talented young man called Freeze, and you won't believe this guy. He actually believed that this roster I've put together on paper is going to do well in LCS, and I was like, listen, sign for like a whole year, mate. And I was like, not even a split, okay. And then I was like, yep, well, anytime you're ready to go, mate, we can begin the corrupting of Freeze. So anyway... Obviously, I'm Thorin, usual host. Monty here, usual co-host, and now perennial 0 to 2 loser of every single week. Try to avoid the topic.
Whoa.
Owner of Renegades. That's a regular topic that he doesn't talk very much about. And then our guest for this week is Amazing. Now, I've always been waiting for the episode to have Amazing on. I knew it was going to happen eventually. We were setting it up for a long time. It was like the Loco Doco thing, we had this like fake banter, where we pretended. You guys get fooled all the time. The pantomime, we pretended it was like odds, a lot of salt going on there. How you doing, Amazing?
I'm good.
Okay. So Amazing, obviously, of Origen, formerly of TSM, formerly of Copenhagen Wolves, formerly of Team Acer. Yeah, we can keep going back. So let's just start here, Amazing. Obviously, there has been a little bit of friction between people on the show before. There's been differing opinions. That's an interesting way to put it, right? There's been times where people felt hard done by other people, or felt like things are being misinterpreted. So we'll just start at this area so it's out of the way, okay? My first question to you goes like this. When you were on TSM, what point is it that somehow you got like mad at this show? Because I noticed it was only when you were on TSM. Like when you were on Copenhagen Wolves, there's no problem. There's never any issue for that. In fact, people won't know this, but before you joined TSM, I actually remember the reason one of the reasons I had you on Skype was actually we used to both be in Team Acer, but I remember I messaged you before you joined TSM. I was like, we should do a reflections or something, or I can't remember if that was even out there. It might have been grilled at the time. I was like, we should do one of those interviews. You were like, yeah, sure, we'll do it. But then like a week later, you joined TSM, so I was like, well, that's out the window. So what went wrong, Amazing? What went wrong in this relationship?
Okay. I think it was basically one of the first weeks where I think it was the notion that I would be one of the bottom tier junglers in the LCS. As in, like, when I joined TSM, we had a rough time in the beginning of the split, and I was basically just stuck in a farm mode to a certain extent because our shot calling was non-existent and the synergy between the lanes was not there. So I feel like at that point there was a notion on the show when I was referred to as like one of the bottom tier junglers in the LCS, and that is when things got salty for me, at least, because I knew at that point what the issues were, and I could do little to nothing about it, you know. And since I already had this hive mind against me that I'm replacing the odd one who's like the like that part of TSM, you know, was like the god, whatever it is, you know, the chosen one, you know.
He wasn't the chosen one by the end there.
Yeah, but you know, like you have to imagine, you have like these fans that are already like, oh, why the fuck is Amazing replacing Odd One? Odd One would be so much better for the team and everything like that. And then you have like a popular show saying something like that. It is go like really bad, you know. It is really bad.
Sure. No, listen, I can definitely understand that aspect. That's actually one area that people don't realise. A lot of the time when pros are upset at the show is because it's like this. They think, sometimes they're wrong. Like, sometimes they'll actually, it'll just be something where we've said it, but also fans had already said it, you know, but they think that because we said it, that we made, like, we influenced all the fans. But in this particular case, here's the thing, I'm trying to think of the timeline of that. On one level, I don't really fully remember what you're talking about, because I remember one of the things we used to get a lot of grief over is that we constantly said at the end of the first split of that year that, like, probably if they're going to upgrade, they have to get rid of the odd one, because at the time, his, like, mechanically he wasn't super sick, and it's not like they had amazing shot calling, they just had like okay shot calling.
No,
they used to basically just take team fights anyway. So we used to say at the time, if they're going to upgrade someone, because we were always talking on the international level, you know, like we always used to say, okay, so maybe the odd one's okay in NLCS, but if you put them against Dandy and these, it's obviously going to be a bad show, right? So. Yeah. I mean, obviously, it was a bad show for everyone against Dandy, but the point still stands. So we made this point, okay, that you probably have to go to that position. Now, here's the thing. It is true. You got to admit this. The first game you played for them was that one where you'd done the AMA, then you came in and showed everyone your Volibear. So we were going to mention that, right? We can't not mention that.
You can't escape the Volibear.
Okay, no, but okay, so actually. So the MA was obviously a mistake. We can all admit it. It was not the smartest thing to do, because in the first game I kind of had like 3 target bans and then Lee Sin first pick against C9, and I was like, so I played Xin Zhao in playoffs. I'm just gonna maybe go back to that, and it actually went fine in the first game of the split. You know, I think I started 2-0, and then we died randomly over the whole map. Top lane died, then like High made a solo play on bottom and everything like that, and I was like, that sucks. We lose, you know, and then we go bottom at minute 22 and enemies get Nasher. So it's like the AMA was a mistake, but you know, like if I just go back to that game, it was not like that I was completely outmatched because he got another jungle, you know. It just like I played Xin Zhao into Lee Sin, which is obviously at some point gonna be a really bad matchup because Xin Zhao just doesn't scale, you know. But it's just like I made mistakes. Mistakes were made, and that game actually particularly stuck in my memory, and I'm like, people use that against me, and I'm like, why? Why actually? Why do you use that against me? Just because I played Xin Zhao and everything like that? I mean, it repeated later on when I played Volibear, which was obviously a worse choice. But I mean, I don't want to go deep into that game. Was just, you know, that was actually like a really bad choice on my end. I just decided that I wanted to pick Volibear for whatever reason, and went through my mind at that point, because everything that I saw on my champion was like, what did I play the last one and a half years in my career? I played Volibear, Xin Zhao, and like the champions that were banned. So I'm like, I think I'm gonna go with Volibear this time, you know, just to have like the switch coming in between them. And it didn't go so well. It definitely didn't go so well.
So here's the thing: unless it was a joke, I could be mistaken here. I obviously haven't watched all the first episodes of Summoning Insight in a long time, but I don't remember anyone saying you were like one of the bottom 4 in LCS. I mean, at the time, the jungle talent wasn't that good in it. In fact, if that was one of the running jokes on the show, it was like it was mainly jungle and mid with the shit positions in NA. They were the ones where it was like, that's why the odd one was still like a top player, you know, like many years at the end of his career, you know. So, because all he had to do was be a bit smart, and he could get by in an LCS. So I don't know. Here's the thing: either as a joke or maybe it was an initial comment. I'm not sure, but I will say this: one of the areas, especially from talking to Loco Doco, where I think that people in TSM took stuff that actually we didn't even say on the show as meaning you were shit, was they always stressed this idea that we put out the meme that like you only played 2 champions at a time or whatever in time. But the thing is, I don't even understand that, because to this day people say like, oh, that's like such a mischaracterization, like everyone only played 2 champions at the time. And also, first things first, in that split with Copenhagen Wolves, you played like 3 champions, or 4, I think you played like 3 champions that were like vaguely good. It was like Lee Sin, you had Elise that was like
Elise
here and there.
I think Yeah, I had a horrific.
Wasn't that
win rate.
great? But the Lee Sin was good.
Yeah.
That was good. And then you had Eve that you played, and then so you basically like two main champions you were really good on. So okay, but that's fair enough because when you're in Copenhagen Wolves, you could do that because you've got Forgiven there, you're there, you've got two carries, it's fine, it works. So you come into NALCS, and over that split, weren't you like there was two champions you were playing, mate? This time it was Elise was doing well. And Lee Sin. Now, technically, I'll give you credit here. You did get a win on a champion called Jarvan. You lost 4 games.
Yeah, I did it.
But literally, 15 of the 16 wins came on those two champions. Now, I'm not someone who thinks win rate alone, by the way, is like obviously someone can be wicked on a champion and lose the game. But if you win 15 out of your 16 games on two champions, that suggests that you're pretty good on those ones, not as good on the other ones. Is that off?
Yeah, no, it's not off. It's not off. So, I mean, if you want me to describe the situation, like
just let us know what you think.
So, the thing is that in scrims and everything like that, like my champion pool is obviously bigger, because like a lot of the times there were target bans against me, which was something that most people didn't recognize in NASCS. That at the beginning of the split, like legit in most of the games, and even until the end of the split, at least one out of my champions, or maybe even 2 out of my champions, were banned. Like basically that happened, and then the third one was picked. So I was basically forced in a situation where I was in a like somewhat uncomfortable situation because the champions, like besides like Lee Sin, Elise, Kha'Zix, Eve at that point, I didn't really practice because there was no necessity for me. But the bigger issue is that at that point in time, our like the way our team functioned was basically like this. Okay, guys, hope that we don't fall behind by mid game as much and just take fights. Basically that's how it is. We play a really solo queuish mindset and just had like the jungle somewhat decide to what he wants to do. And since due to Copenhagen Wolves, my influence was basically like this. I was influenced by Copenhagen Wolves, where in Copenhagen Wolves I had Youngbuck saying, okay, in 30 seconds around, like you can just like walk top lane and look for a gank, whatever it is, because the lane is pushing towards me and everything like that. So on that this kind of frame of action basically I had on every lane. Like mid lane did the same, bot lane kind of said, okay, we need a counter gang in like 1 minute. And on TSM, I felt like this kind of talking environment was on communication was just not existent. So for me, it was like, if I don't play a carry jungle, I'm not going to be as proactive doing what I want to do. As in like, when I play Lee Sin, Elise, I just go behind the lanes and just gank them on my own and just decide for myself and do whatever I want to. Whereas on other champions that are not as proficient at ganking, I basically had to rely more on information and especially on information where the wards are and everything like that. So if the frame of communication is not there on those champions, you're not going to be proactive, and so your team is going to fall behind or not going to be ahead at a certain point in the game when they should be ahead, depending on the lanes. So every time I went off the carry champions, there was no proactiveness, there was no active decision making. So I just basically took it out the ass for 20 minutes, and then we either win team fights or we lost them. And in most cases, we lost them.
And this is just to be clear on this, because a lot of people may not have the frame of reference. We're talking about early 2014 here when you first started on TSM.
This is the summer split. Yeah. The summer split, Monte.
Okay, so this was actually... It's also important to note that this was really before coaches. I mean, Locodoco wasn't even a coach until partway through that season, correct? So you started this with literally no coach.
Yeah, we Loco coached remotely, or from basically from Korea, and then at some point he flew in. I think it was like week 3 or something like that. Yeah. And he flew in. Yeah.
It's also worth noting that he was also not full-time coaching remotely for you. He was also coaching for Alliance at that time. Yeah. So when we talk about it was a much rawer time in the NALCS, which when you say things like we didn't have direction, and that was true of most teams at that point.
Well, Monte, you were a coach in the league at the time, also remotely.
Yeah.
And for the cameras. You must have done picks and bans against amazing teams, etc. Do you remember this era of when he was jungling at TSM?
Yeah. You banned his junglers.
Okay.
I mean, that was how the split started, because people figured out that you could quite easily deal with that situation where you could force TSM into really weird jungle picks. Obviously, we lost to them in the playoffs. We didn't make the playoffs that season.
Oh yeah,
no, you did. You lost. Oh yeah, you lost in the first round.
Right. that was when there were only 8 teams, and so you could go to the playoffs and still end up in relegations. That was fun. But yeah, I vaguely remember that. I don't remember too many specifics.
Oh no, it was actually Curse you lost to. My mistake.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then to Dignitas.
So okay, here's the thing. At the time, what you're saying actually makes sense because I quite vividly remember. I think this is something else we mentioned on the show, which again was probably taken as trash talk, but actually isn't. Which is, I remember saying when you were on those two. Here's the thing that people always mischaracterize that I've never said, which is that you were a bad jungler or that you were bad in any way. What I always said was on those champions you were like exceptionally good because on those ones you would carry the game, but if you're on the other champions, kind of literally what you're saying now, it's like you would do nothing. Now the reason that looked as bad is also the context that. If you come from the era of the Odd One, the one thing the Odd One was always good at is he was like the super supportive jungler who just played like supportive champions and 24/7 just supports like, well, it was obviously mid lane back then because we all know why. But anyway, he's always just going to support the lane in that sense. So it sounds like what you're saying sounds like it matches up with it. Is that when you weren't on those champions, playmaking champions, it's not like you could just go with no communication, farm the jungle for 20 minutes and then come back out and have some effect on the game, right?
Kind of. But it kind of matches up with what you said, but it's also like, I mean, I'm just gonna admit it. You kind of like for the sake of just being real about it, the weighted questions that you ask like to other junglers that like you interviewed and everything like that, because like I like your content, so I'm gonna follow it to some extent. And you had a couple of weighted questions toward other junglers. For example, like I think there was like a reflection with Dexter, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So you basically asked him the weighted question of like, so what do you think would be amazing if he doesn't get the like his 2 champions or whatever it is, you know? And you basically like forced it in a manner where you wanted to have a negative response. So obviously you're gonna like pick it up negatively. That's at least my opinion. If someone has this negative tone in voice or like kind of wants to have this shit talk coming in, then I'm always gonna accept it and just like see it as something that is like kind of aggressive, you know? So that is basically my perception of the situation.
Okay.
But
see, here's the thing. That's what's confusing to me. I legitimately want to know why that was. Why you were so good on 2 champions and then the drop off on the other ones was like. I mean, you're giving me a reason now, but I couldn't ask you at the time, so I can't know what the communication issue is. So you have to remember when I'm watching the game, I can only see what the player's doing. So I have to assume he knows what he's doing. Especially if you've got coaches, I have to assume this is their plat. Like that's the thing you have to realize. Think about this concept. If you're a player, think about this. When we watch you play, especially if you're a top level pro and you have coaches and you have like good teammates around you, when you do fucked up mistakes, we assume that's what you thought was the best decision at the time. We assume you wanted to do that. When I watched some games yesterday, like TSM C9, I have to assume TSM thinks those are the best things they can do at that point in the game, and they think this is wicked. We'll win worlds doing this. Like I have to actually think that because these teams are practicing that shit. So I understand that I'm then going to get the conclusion. Oh wait, this team is mentally defective. What are they doing with these team fights? But that's what I have to think because I can't know what like the secret breakdowns are behind the scene. But here's the thing. Yeah. One area that I always got mad at fans who always brought this topic up as if I was like being biased about it is what they always used to say correctly was like, yeah, well, to be fair, Lee Sin and Elise was the meta at the time. Not quite. It was. Those were the main 2 champions for almost everyone, but there was a champion called Eve. Do you remember that champion? She is invisible, so you might not have seen her, but she was a champion amazing. You weren't doing anything on her. Meanwhile, you go through the league.
Did I play her? That
yeah, you played one game, I think. Or something
that was against CLG actually. We should have won that game. Like we should have won that game. I remember it was the Bjergsen TF game when he.
Oh my god, that game was hilarious! I remember watching that game.
Yeah.
You should not have won that game, Bjergsen. That was one of his worst games ever, I think. Just individually.
Yeah, it was.
He was like, I remember him like randomly TF ulting into Baron Pit or into Dragon Pit and just like dying. He was basically just like feeding with TF ultimate that game.
Yeah,
I remember that game very clearly.
It was a good game. No, but I mean, I'm just gonna be really blunt about it. Like honestly, there were any jungler based in the league besides Meteos was unable to play. Like maybe Dexter was able to play the 4 champions that I mentioned on a high level. No one besides me and Dexter and me, Dexter, Meteos were able to play those 4 champions on a really high level. We had No Name who was kind of good on Lee Sin. He was kind of good on no, actually I don't even remember. He was good on Lee Sin.
Elise was alright as well. Yeah.
His Lee Sin was good, but there was no one basically that was good on those 4 champions besides these 3 people, and there was no one besides me who actually got target banned on those 4 champions, you know? So
Sure.
It just flat out sucked. And if your team is unable to compensate, and actually at some point you have to assume it, that especially with coaching staff and everything that came in later, like at some point there has to be compensation for someone getting target banned. We always have the discussion if like, okay, Bjergsen is so good, he's gonna draw like 3 target bans, so the other carries are gonna be able to step up. And in that situation, I was in technically. And if at that point, like shot calling, everything like that, which I was not a part of at that point because I was just actually a solo queue type player, was unable to do anything besides ganking, maybe team fighting, relying on the mechanics instead of understanding in the game on a high level. If no one is able to compensate by shot calling and everything like that, like things are gonna go downhill and it's gonna look really shitty because the jungler is in most cases the one, besides maybe the support, that is gonna look the most starved in most cases if your team is behind. So if things go bad in the early game, you have no communication between the lanes on junglers that you can't carry with no one else compensating for you, it just flat out sucks. And the hive mind with Odd One behind like and behind them or behind the fans that were kind of like still like wanted to replace me for some reason again. And Nightblue was also a streamer at the time, and I'm not joking about this. I had questions on my Twitter, on my Facebook, like why is Nightblue not playing for you? And I'm like, whatever, man, and whatever, you know. It's like and I had to respond politely because Nightblue at that time was also a featured TSM streamer, so I couldn't just say because he's a fucking solo queue jungler, you know, he just doesn't know shit. And I can't respond to that, you know. I can't just fucking say that, which I was so sad about. But then you have like all these factors coming into play, you know, like, and it honestly just sucked for me. It honestly just sucked for me. Being in that environment and having like people that are really popular as you guys, like honestly at that point I was like, what did I have, like 30k followers on Twitter, and you're like fucking monsters that like bring the shit out and basically support the fans' hive mind. You know, they're gonna be selective about it. They don't care if you say, okay, he's good on the 2 champions, but he's bad on everything else, you know, like they're gonna pick out the bad stuff and use it against you. And if your team is not successful, plus you have someone that is like that replaced Odd One, you're gonna give him shit. You're gonna give him a lot of shit. And this is basically what happened. Even though during the season I basically evolved from someone that became like was a solo queue jungler, and at some point became like a secondary shot caller, if not like partly the main shot caller, especially when we think of the Samsung White series. Like that progression was not acknowledged at all, and I was basically just put into a situation where I always had to face adversity to a certain extent, and it was not a good situation to be in. And obviously, like at that point, if I have someone shit talking me on Twitter and everything, like, or someone shit talking me on Twitter and be selective about it, then I'm obviously gonna be fucking mad about it, and therefore I was really effing mad at you. You know? just gonna say that, you know.
Okay. But here's the thing. If we think in the timeline, anyone who ever thinks I've got mad at a pro, I talk shit to them, always go back in the timeline and look who fired when, right? So here's the thing. Maybe on the show I criticised you, or maybe I made jokes about TSM, because obviously at the time there was an acrimonious relationship.
Yeah, I think you called Turtle and like by the R word. That happened too, you know. Just saying.
Technically I didn't. I said a joke like that. But anyway.
A joke like that, yeah.
It was obviously a joke. Do you think I actually think he's a retard? Obviously not.
No, I mean,
if he was actually a retard, it'd be a very horrible thing to say, right? Oh, this person's retarded, that's why he's losing.
I mean, obviously, I don't assume you're gonna mean that, you know, like because, but it's just something. If you say that, you're obviously gonna make yourself really attackable, you know. Like if you say that, even if it's a joke, I can call you out on that. Like, and I could just talk shit back to you, and obviously, that, you know.
But here's the thing. I remember when you talked shit, and it was during the split, and it was after you watched like a Summon Insight episode or something. You put some sort of comment like, the gist of it was something like, you know, like who cares what these people think, or I don't who respects their opinion, or something like that, right? Something along those lines.
Yeah, I remember.
By the way, I'll just say I mentioned this I think as a random comment on past episodes, but one of the things I used to do because it's fun is, you probably know this, Amazing. So you know, most of the time when any of us load up Twitch.
Yeah.
I mean, we're automatically logged into our accounts, right? Like I was logged into like Thorin, you know, like. Well, here's the thing. All of TSM, everyone streams. So sometimes when we would do some of the Insight episodes, I would go to that, when we were streaming it, like live, I'd click on that user list and I'd scroll down and they were all there. It was like TSM Reginald, like Loco Doco. And I was like, brilliant. Yeah. So in public, they're like, oh, it's a shit, this show. What the fuck? I hate all this. And then they were like, oh, the latest Summon Insight, running with a cup of cocoa and some popcorn. I can't wait to find out what they've upset me about this week.
We can just admit it. Like, people were watching it, obviously, for the controversy, and we're waiting for you to say another damn thing about TSM just to get back at you.
Yeah.
Just like.
So what you're saying was his plan was super effective.
Yeah, actually, it worked. It even worked with me. He fucking gives me shit on Twitter 24/7 still. And now I'm on the show. So.
Okay. In a way, yeah.
So it kind of worked out, but yeah, like maybe some people were hoping that he would give other people some more shit than us, because honestly at that point, like, the TSM topic was pretty heavy. Like, honestly, every other team had like a 1 minute segment and you're like talking about TSM, we're ranting about like every single member for like 10 minutes, and I'm like, okay.
Well, we do tend to talk more about the top level teams in general.
But here's another thing amazing, though. Here's one thing that people have to credit. This is one thing that annoys me about that split, is that if you've noticed in the history of LCS, once a split's done, everyone wants to move on to the next one, right? So the way people in their mind tend to remember every split is they just remember the results of the playoff.
Yeah.
So whoever won the playoff, they go, right, well, they were the best team, and I guess they were always the best team, and then whoever, for example, so CLG did terribly in that playoffs. So everyone now remembers, oh, they were shit, they were never any good. Well, no, they were the best team in the league at like the midpoint. Dignitas was one of the best teams early on. So my problem here is, if you remember the order of TSM stuff, one of the areas where we criticised TSM most heavily was that period in time where it was about like halfway into the split, where you guys had some insane record where you were like one of the top ranked teams, so you were like top 4 in the league, but then basically almost every win was against a team that wasn't top 4 or top 5. It's like all your wins were like complexity, EG, and so at this point in time, here's the point I'm making, okay? Everyone who was a TSM fan was like, oh, you're just attacking them, like, who cares what the win record is? But here's the thing, technically, since you obviously improved a lot, since your team then beat Dignitas, beat LMQ, beat C9, 3 of the top teams, there must have been some evolution and growth. Therefore, to actually admit that, you have to admit what were you essentially saying? You weren't as good at that point against the top teams, and you got better. But every TSM fan is the opposite. They're like, we were always good.
No, I mean, I agree and disagree. I don't think that at any point of the split we're significantly worse than anyone else. We scrimmed every team. Like, obviously scrims don't mean everything, but I'm just gonna base it off of scrims. And throughout the split, even when our shot calling and everything like that was not efficient at all, we were able to keep at least equal records with everyone in the league in scrims. So it's not like we're bad or anything like that, or other teams were just like much better. It was just the fact that we struggled with nerfs and everything like that on stage, and it was really hard to translate whatever we did in scrims onto stage. And it's sad to say, but since we had inefficient shot calling, I was not part of the shot calling at all. It was basically Gleep Laboo at that point. And just think about it, you put a how old was he, like 17, 18-year-old at that point? You put him in the shot calling role because you don't want any other player to carry the burden, because Bjergsen couldn't carry the burden at that point. He was going through the same evolution that I was going through, from a solo star to a team player that like is able to carry with his abilities while shot calling,
So you were actually doing some of the shot calling there? Because obviously we only ever heard that it was Bjergsen,
No, in the end it was basically me and Lustboy like operating together, where I basically like communicated which lanes I want to gang and like which lanes are pushing. So and the frame of communication was also different in the end, where it was more like Darius, for example, telling me, okay, this guy's pushing up, it's actually communicated about it and everything like that. But at the beginning of the split, I agree, which may have been the evolution that why it was not a replicate on stage was because no one of us was able to keep up the communication on stage, and especially the shot calling. When you think of someone like Gleep, who should have never been in the position. Let's just keep it real. Like a new player should never be in the position of carrying the shot calling, and it was put that way because it was really hard to put that pressure on Bjergsen, because we were struggling, not like struggling individually, but he was like struggling with he was actually struggling individually, maybe with a couple of issues cope with it. I wasn't the best friends with him, so he probably lost a friend in L1 too, someone he could rely on. And it was just a lot of burden onto players that shouldn't have been there in the first place. And being in a winning organization that has always been winning in TSM is double the burden on everything. So you put Gliblabu in that role, and he's going to crumble. There's nothing you can do about it. If the team loses and everything like that, he's going to crumble. And everyone who was shot calling at that point basically crumbled under the pressure of being the shot caller. We had a couple of rotations where we tried to Gleb at first, then was me for some time, but I couldn't do it, so it was basically put back onto Gleb. And at some point we established that it should be on Bjergsen. It should be on Bjergsen because he's the one that actually seems to be capable of doing both. Be a good individual player while maintaining the shot calling role. And he got the role and he performed on it. He was probably he was the best player in the league easily at some point, because was able to keep up this individual play while being able to shot call at a high level. So come playoffs and everything like that, this evolution went through in terms of shot calling, being able to replicate whatever we do in scrims on stage was because we had a reliable shot caller who was able to perform at his uttermost, at any point of the game. So given this evolution basically, and us being better at the end of the split is obviously true. We're not great during the split, but we're not bad either. Which is something that even as we're a top 3 team anyway. I think we're third, right? We're third that split. So it was not like we're really bad. We just lost every game against Dig, even though we should have won. Actually, against LMQ we lost every game, and against Dig we lost 3 out of 4, I think.
Yeah.
And against Dig we should have had at least one more win. But that's a whole nother story. But it was just that we're unable to cope with the aggression that these teams put up on stage because we're unable to replicate our frame of communication on stage that we had in scrims. And in scrims, you were able to cope with the aggression that they had by making mid to late game shot calling happen maybe some of the time. But on stage, if you have a best of 1 setting and they made an aggressive play early, it was over. It was over. Nothing to do about it. So yeah, at the end of the split, we're definitely way better than we were in the beginning of the split, as in the shot calling wise. But individually, I don't think anything changed, to be fair.
See, here's the principle, Monte, I've realised about a lot of NA pros, particularly TSM players. It's when you have a group of friends when you're younger. And part of the thing about when you're young and you have friends is sometimes it's just happenstance. You know this guy because you like him, or you're going to school with this guy. But maybe a third or a fourth guy in the group is just because they know that guy, it's not always a logic. You haven't all sat down and voted in who's going to be in the group of friends. Sometimes there's just some people who just get in the group somehow. And so what tends to happen is everyone has that one friend who even they don't really like that much, that guy might actually be an idiot, or he might just be weird, or when you're younger, it's all about if you can fight, maybe that guy's just a wimp or something. So here's the thing, that guy, that guy might even get on your nerves. You might just be oh, why does he always come around? Whose brother is he or something? But if someone outside the group is fuck off, retard, to that guy, you're hey, watch it, that's my friend. It's that's my retard, that's my friend. It's you're the only one who's allowed to bag on that guy, you know the principle, Monte. And so that's when people get offended, even though what you're saying is entirely accurate. They're just hey, you don't say that to my friend, even though they know it's the case. Have you ever heard of this principle, Monte?
I think I understand what you're getting at. Yeah.
It's called friendship, dude.
I'm not aware of this, mate.
Really
I'm trying to learn, but
it's a really basic principle.
Okay.
But what were you getting with that anyway?
So I think what I'm seeing here is loads of the things you're saying match up with what we said, but because we didn't know the reason behind it, what we said is invalid. It's well, how could they know what that is? It's actually for a totally other reason that our shot call is totally breaking down and we're losing all these games to the top teams. They should know that in scrims, when I'm not nervous, then I win the game every time. How am I supposed to know that?
No, I don't think anyone, to be fair, I don't think anyone expected that. It's more you know what you're saying, and you know how you approach a lot of things. So you're obviously gonna get flagged for with the shit that you're saying because you put it in frames where you're gonna make yourself attackable. You know that's by the way, fucking story anyway.
Just so we're clear here,
that's why you actually have a following, because you keep giving shit and you get shit for it and you get fired back.
Okay, here's the thing. I'm not in any way saying I don't think anything I say should be flammable or ever get abuse, or that I think everything I say is wonderful and everyone should go, thanks for saying that to me. I'll just take that in deep inside my heart and write on a little locket what Thorin said about me on that episode. Keep it close to me at all times. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that it's fine, but I just get mad when people try to suggest there was no basis to what I said. Usually even a joke, okay, so the wild turtle joke.
Yeah.
So obviously that's a bit ridiculous as a joke, in as much as it's true. Americans get super like caught up over that word. Even though, by the way, everyone in Europe uses that word. Like, but let's be real here. As an AD carry at that point in time, Wildturtle was reasonably bad. He was good on one champion like Tristana, that was about it. And if his style of play, if I had to describe it using words that weren't banned, I'd have to find synonyms for the word retarded. Because it would be like flash in, jump in the middle of a fight. He's the only damage output, but he goes in and gets caught by all the CC, dashes in on like all the fucking like at the time it wasn't that smart. So it's not like what I was saying. I didn't make it up one day. It wasn't like Mad Libs. I didn't go wild blank is blank. Like Wildturtle, what would I put here? Like roll a little dice. Oh, just turns out it's a bit of an idiot in the game. Okay.
Okay, shall I elaborate on the Wildturtle issue?
Okay.
So,
please.
I mean, I'm 100% sure, and this may I'm actually sure that's the case. Turtle got bored during games. He played the first 10, 15 minutes. He plays the first 10, 15 minutes.
To be fair, I used to get bored during TSM games.
He's like 10 CS up, 20 CS up on like carry champions like Lucian, and then he's like, guys, I have like 2 kills right now, so I'm just gonna dive that guy. Goes 1v3, dies, and I'm like, well, that sucks, you know. He's like, that's basically how it went. He was good, but he was actually getting bored in the games, and I don't know if it's like something psychological or whatever it is, but that's how he played the games. He was like, okay, it's like solo queue, like first 10, 15 minutes are important, and then afterwards the game is won or lost, you know. And then whatever happens, he's just gonna troll and try to go for the fancy plays, try to be like Mr. Montage, and that's what he went for. At least that's how I felt about it. It was frustrating at times, but I don't think he was genuinely bad. He was just like uneducated about the game. I'd say that. I'd say he was uneducated about the game.
He was never bad, but the point is his decision making seemed stupid from the outside.
I mean, I'm just. I can't say anything. If I say yes, it's gonna be like, oh my god, Amazing is so salty. Like Turtle is doing well now.
Yeah, but here's the thing: you're describing right now the TSM effect, because it's only because TSM's fans are so harsh and the org is so harsh that you can't say anything. Because here's the thing:
no.
No, listen.
It's not
think
org,
about,
by the way. Like legit. They have been, like, I've been on record saying, like in an interview, I said that I think the Last Boy and Thorin synergy is not. I said it in words. I told them like they're good examples of dual jungle synergy, and they're bad examples. And I list Last Boy and Thorin. I basically say that at words while we're playing them for the second game still, you know. So it's not like I haven't been on record like being harsh about them and had no backfire. It's just like the way that I'm going about things when I criticize other players or other players in general is a bit more, how to put this, a bit more socially acceptable, I suppose, you know, politically correct. Like,
but here's the thing. So I'll give you another example of a famous North American carry who many people think is an idiot in how he plays. He's called Double Lift. Now, everyone in CLG, even while they're on CLG, is allowed to be like, yeah, that was actually totally moronic the way he went in there. That guy, he's not really much of a thinker, you know. We try to just have him more like shoot people and stuff. Like, it's fine. Everyone in the world is allowed to bag on Double Lift all day long for being a bird brain and just like mispositioning, getting caught by all the CC and dying. That's allowed. You know why? Because he's not on TSM. If you're on TSM, you are some like vaunted idol where if you dare say anything, then the fucking cult of TSM's like, kill him, kill the heathen, get him, sacrifice his blood. Like, it's pretty hardcore, you know?
Yeah.
It's pretty hardcore. So I've got a question, though.
Okay.
Here's one thing. Like as we've been describing here, by the way, once Twitter beef starts, I like it, okay? I enjoy it. It's not ideal. Depends on who the person is, obviously. But it's fun in its own way.
Yeah.
Okay? So it's a way you can have fun. It's a way it's then acceptable to like BM the person because they're BMing you. So it's like we're agreeing that we're allowed to BM each other. So when that happens, I can understand when the playoffs happened, that split, as to why TSM as a group would be like, right, well, it's us against the world, you know, like people are talking shit on us, but we're going to prove them wrong. Here's the thing, okay? I'll give you the first series when he played Dignitas. That was what you call in the industry, technical term here, a reach. When I said that Dig would beat TSM in a best of 5. When if you remember, Dig had been losing like every game at the last of the split.
Yeah.
But I just tried to dream the impossible dream. I thought, yeah, this Zion Spartan guy, he could beat Dyrus. Okay, we've got that one. We've got that one in the bag. Shifter, to play really safe Shifter. You don't ever go for anything. Okay, safe mid. The bot lane was okay at the time. I thought, this could work. Like, it could maybe work. And you got to give me credit for this. At the time, people could ban out one or two of your champions So at the time...
No. At that time, not anymore.
But here's the thing. At that time, you actually, before then, didn't have Kha'Zix, which is one of the picks that you got way better on in the playoffs. So in playoffs, you had Kha'Zix and Nunu, which weren't your champions in the split. So I couldn't have known that you were going to bring those out.
But I played, okay, sure you couldn't have known that. Actually, you could have, because I played Kha'Zix the split before in the playoffs. In Copenhagen Wars. It wasn't relegation.
Yeah.
It wasn't relegations. I played in relegations 2 games, and it was banned out afterwards. It's not like, I'm like, okay, you could be reasonable about it, but honestly, at that point, I don't think that anyone had the luxury, or basically at that point, the luxury wasn't there anymore to target ban me twice, even though people tried. Like for example, in the Dignitas series, I remember I think game 1 I got the Lee Sin, and we even lost that game, and afterwards they banned it. So then game 2 I could get Elise. We win. Game 3 we win.
Okay.
And then game 4 I think I brought up the Nunu. It's not like at that point anyone could have actually I guess you could have argued that, but it's just like I suppose you could have argued.
Okay, but
I actually have to receive my point. You're right. I actually think you could have argued at that point. Because
that's my point. On that one, I'll admit, it was a mixture. Here's a problem when you're an analyst. One thing that's really hard to do, which I'm very good at in most cases, but there are certain teams that are my weakness here. Like, for example, TSM, where the problem is, if in your mind you could make in any way, like we're saying here, a vaguely reasonable case as to why they would lose, and you want them to lose, when those two things meet in your mind, this crazy alchemy happens where the attraction is like, say it,
where you
say
predict just to win over TSM in the best of 5.
And then the third factor is, if they were to lose, then it would also go against public opinion. Those 3 combined are so dangerous for an analyst, because the temptation to be the hero who makes that pick. Basically, in general, if you're doing predictions, don't be a hero, because if you try to be a hero, you end up getting wrecked a lot of the time. But anyway, here's the thing. First one I'll give you.
To be fair, I picked TSM to win that best of 5.
Okay. So on the first one though, Monte, I think you actually picked Dig, but okay, we'll see on that one. Well,
really?
I can't remember. I think on the first one you went with Dig as well. Then you changed to TSM after. I think.
I guess at Crumbs.
I thought I picked TSM that whole playoffs, but maybe I'm wrong.
I think you went to TSM from semis onwards. So anyway, here's the point: is I'll even give you the first series, the Dig one. What I will not give you, amazing, is the semi-finals and the final, because here's the thing: semi-finals, you're playing LMQ.
Yeah.
Now everyone now, like Odoko, is like, well, we beat them. Like, you can't talk shit. And I was like, wait, whoa. You'd lost like every game to them in the split. They were awesome at team fighting at all points in the game. Your team mostly won because you didn't have Super 6 shot calling by having really good mechanical team fights. Like, I think that was a pretty good recipe for like LMQ could win. And it was a full 5-game series. It's not like you wrecked them 3-0. That's not ridiculous to predict LMQ will win that.
I mean, honestly, at that point, I don't think it was like the Dignitas series should have been like, everyone kind of saw what happened to Dignitas. Like even the games that they won at the end of the split was like that they played really subpar and they got lucky in most of the games that they.
Yeah, well, we agree on that one. I mean, most of the season, Dignitas. I think Thorin had that. That was the season that Thorin was saying like even Dignitas knew they shouldn't have been winning, right? Because they had a giant celebration after every single game.
That was a different split, but yeah, I get your point anyway.
Okay. To go on, I think it was reasonable to not assume that we were winning against LMQ. I think it is reasonable because at that point, LMQ was actually a fucking juggernaut. They were actually even though they ended up tying with C9 at the end of the split, they kind of revolutionized the way of playing in NA. Where if you watch the spring split and then the summer split, the difference in play in how the teams approach the game was completely different. That like No Name, I don't know what he brought to the team, but even though he fought in the playoffs, he brought something to the team that just felt like a completely different way of playing. He made everyone play more aggressive in the league and basically just like made level 3 ganks happening. That's basically what he did. It's similar to Crumbs, but Crumbs was kind of I think less smart about it. Whatever it is, he just did it for the sake of it instead of actually knowing that he should pressure at certain times. But yeah, No Name was pretty good at that. And come the LMQ series, I don't think that any of us were really expecting to win. We just based it off of scrims because at that point I think we scrimed best of 5s with both C9 and Curse at that point. And I mean I might be lying. My memory might be lying about it, but I'm sure that we won like 15 best of 5s in a row in scrims against Curse. So it was reasonable to assume that we have a decent shot at LMQ because actually brought in the Nunu, and they actually played really interesting comps, which was something that maybe they picked up from other teams and everything like that. So it was reasonable to assume that we would lose the MLQ series, but I mean, we managed to pull it out technically, and it's just like at that point in time, we actually found the way of playing. If you watch Dignitas series and then you watch the LMQ series, it's like day and night. Like Dignitas series was full clown fiesta after the early game. It was basically hope for the best games, basically, especially game 2. We're up 5k, I think, at like 20 minutes. And then we dance around Nasher for some reason and get caught, and they get back in the game, and it's a 66-minute game where I have to back to the Nexus and everything like that. So it's just, like at that point in time, the LMQ series, I agree with you that it was something that was reasonable to assume that we lose, and I don't think it was something that would have been that surprising, to be fair.
I mean, I think Monte did pick TSM to win that series, but LMQ was pretty good at the time, right, Monte?
From what I recall, I think they were still unmeasured in their macro game, but I think you're right that it was their team fighting and their willingness to make plays and play aggressively and force teams to react that had put them in a very good position to win those, or to at least perform well in those playoffs.
Like, they used to have all the stats where it would be like number 1 in kills, like number 1 or number 2 in deaths. So it was like the whole point was they just forced the action all the time, but they would also get a lot out of it. Like, it's not like they were just doing that and then feeding kills everywhere. But here's the thing. When we talk about that period in time, that's what I always thought with the trash talk. TSM made a fatal mistake. Because what happened is, when Loco Doco and they won the whole league, they then made out as though, like, oh, you idiots, how could you not have predicted us to win, like, the semis and the final? That's the mistake right there, right? Because here's the key thing. When you win, a secret to how you win, it's the reason why you should always, if you're a pro player and you're a champion, listen to this, always credit your rivals as being really good. Like, what you have to do is you have to go, oh, LMQ, they were, like, so good at team fighting. I don't know how we came through that. Like, we really evolved as a team. In the final, Cloud9, the shot calling was incredible, and we really had to battle back and have a lot of determination, because if you do that, remember, you won at the end. So what all you're really doing is backhanded complimenting yourself. You're just like setting it up like they were really good, but you know what? We were even better.
Like me and Dandy.
Yeah. What you're doing is you're building your level higher and higher, so that when you win, exactly. So that when you win, it's like it sounds even better. Whereas if you say like, oh, those guys weren't even that good, we were always going to beat them, then it's like you've ruined your own accomplishment. So the big problem Loco had was trying to pretend like it was obvious they were going to win all these games. Whereas obviously the great thing about that split to me was that was actually, I think, probably my favorite NALCS split, because for the whole split it was hard to know who was going to win, because it was really up and down with all the teams in the league. Then in the playoffs it was really hard to know, because you had all these best of 5 series, and then Cloud9's going undefeated on one side of the bracket, but then they lose in the final. It was so back and forwards. I think it was actually one of the most competitive splits. So the idea that like, what, TSM's the best, they were just rinsing everyone the whole way, like, no way, man. Like, they had to, it was gradual how they got to the top.
Yeah, I mean, if I recall correctly, I think we had we basically had a discussion about, I think after the split, it was like after like when we're in Korea or something like that, and even like I think Reggie said it, and I may be wrong about this, but I think he said that I think we got pretty lucky winning the playoffs. You know, we're the most hardworking team. However, I'm 100% sure that we were the most hardworking team. We deserve to win. But it's not like that it just comes because you work hard that you're obviously going to win.
Yeah, you need luck as well, sure.
Yeah, so we got decently lucky in the way that, I mean, honestly, C9 and NMQ, they had 4 rank players. Like, and NMQ was no name at that point, who I think game 4 and 5 went like 0-12 or something like that, and basically dove mid lane at level 3, and I'm like, picking Nunu into him, just snowball and get a free kill and everything like that. And I think C9 at that point had like a really fatal front shot calling in terms of lane swaps. So yeah, we got lucky, but vice versa, like because the enemy teams were pretty good, while we're actually the most hardworking team, so we deserved to win at that point. And the hours we put in basically showed at some point that it translated on stage. And I think that's why like Loco and everything like that felt that they had to step up to the stage, you know, and say that you should have always predicted us to win because we were the most hardworking team. But that's something that in their minds was probably just like basically like in their minds, you know, it's just basically there, and it's still there for me because I know how good we were, how good we could have been, and how good we were on stage. You know, that it was all these things, the 3 things were kind of like not like on top of one another. Basically, our expectations were not necessarily met, but our actual play was not met either on stage.
Okay.
You know that I think if I go back in time and like basically go with the same knowledge that I have right now and with the situation and everything like that, I would have approached a lot of things differently, and I think would have beaten the teams that we've beaten during the playoffs basically harder, because I would have just approached things differently, like with game knowledge and everything like that, and just go with that instead of just brute forcing everything, like as in like hoping that things would translate on stage, just hoping that things would translate on stage, and so instead of actually working on it. But yeah, that's why I think that Loco and Reggie were really harsh about it, because for them, both of them, it was really a thing that they felt like that the organization did so much for the players, as well the players did so much for themselves, that everyone who was against us was basically just like getting caught up in a hurricane really soon. That's basically how it is.
So yeah, I'm learning here, Monte, that actually life's just about perspective. Like it's not what you say, it's who you are. So here's the thing, okay? Secretly, the whole time at Worlds, like it turns out the owner of TSM had the same opinion me. He was like, yeah, they were just a bit lucky. They did well, but they got lucky at certain points. Like even Reggie was like, wow, that's bullshit that TSM won.
Yeah.
It was just because Wildturtle got that like triple kill around that bush. Wow, that's so lucky. Oh, wait a minute. Sorry, guys. I mean, yeah, we're going to win Worlds. Let's go on. I've got a question for you, Amazing.
Yeah.
A possibly contentious question.
Yeah.
Did Loco Doco have full authority of TSM as the coach?
Holy shit! Like, yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. So basically, I think for the beginning of the split, when was someone that was actually able to give to the team, as in like knowledge and everything like that. He was someone that had demanded a lot of respect, because none of the players knew how to shot call. He knew how to shot call. So the way that he coached was really respectable, and he woke up every day, made us run to the beach and everything, and walk back, which was like revolutionary at that time. I'm like, I don't even want to get up that early. I don't even want to go to the beach, but my coach is making me do that, so it's probably good. So he kind of built up a lot of authority for the split itself. Whereas I feel like towards the end of the split, especially because Reggie started to step in around the Dignitas series, it was really unhappy with, because we should have 3-0'd them in like everyone's opinion, at least in the team. Reggie stepped in and kind of took authority from Loco. It's not like, but it was more mutual, where Loco probably felt like he was already declining in terms of impact, and Reggie felt like he would have stuff to give to the team, because he watched a lot of SEK. I think he slept like honestly for a month he slept maybe 2 hours a night or something like that, just to be able to watch every game that we play, watch every game that like other regions play, and then step in with his knowledge and help us out. He was like, the way that Reggie approached everything was basically like a fucking lieutenant in the army. That he just like he basically ordered everyone to do things and everything like that. So Reggie demanded more respect than Loco. It was not like Loco losing it, but Reggie just demanded more. So then it seemed like that Loco lost respect and authority, because Reggie, by comparison, just demands more in his type of attitude, in the type that he approaches things, in how he talks to us. It's just how it is.
Yeah, but see, the problem with this, and I think what we're coming to realize from this conversation in general, is that the main issue here is that the way TSM operates to the outside world, because a lot of this I think could have been cleared up. Because remember when Reggie stepped in and Loco was sort of relieved of his duties later on, they made like a public post about it saying that Loco Doco is no longer the head coach, and it's just weird that you even do that. Because why is that necessary to tell everybody? You know what I mean? You can simply just do it internally, and you never have to actually tell anybody that this person is or is not in full authority as the coach any longer. If that makes sense.
Maybe it had something to do with like giving Loco a warning, a public warning, like that he should re-establish or like refocus on things that are actually important, and just show him that in case he wants to keep his job as like a head coach or whatever it is, that he has to like approach things differently. Maybe it was just a public, basically like put someone at a praying and throw tomatoes at him, that kind of thing. Where Like,
well, you shouldn't do that as an organization.
Maybe that's what I was trying to do. Amazing. I was trying to encourage you to get better on those other champions, and I wanted TSM to get better for the split. So I'm secretly the coach. I'm just trying to motivate TSM.
I'm just assuming things at this point, just as you are, because I wasn't part of anything.
Right.
So I just assumed it was just to tell Loco, hey, dude, whatever you're doing, like maybe he was meeting up with fangirls, whatever it is, like that kind of shit. Like I don't know.
Heaven forbid.
Like
heaven forbid.
Okay, I'm just saying that maybe he
hypothetical,
didn't do the things that would grant someone full authority.
Yeah.
And therefore they had to make some kind of thing out of it. But it's just, again, assumptions. I'm not gonna dive deeper into that because
the point is that it goes beyond that, right? It's the way that the team approached outside criticism at all, ever, in its history, was extremely defensive. And instead of just trying to deal with it or have some sort of dialogue with the community about it, it was just a spree of defensive statements and, quite honestly, fucking insane statements, such as like Reggie making a vlog about me not coaching CLG. It just all came off as extraordinarily unprofessional, and then also showed up in the fact that this continued on much later with the organization, the way that they publicly treated Loco Doco in the example I just gave. And sure, you could say maybe they wanted to pillory him and make an example of him or whatever the reason could have possibly been. But at the same time, it just, none of that looks good from the outside, right? And we're getting a lot of information that makes a lot of sense given your performance. But the way that the org and the players within that org reacted to it is frankly fucking hilarious.
I mean, I think at that point of time, there was a lot of tension between, like, first off, TSM CLG were not the best buds like that they are now, where Hotshot hangs out with Reginald and everything like that. Then, like, you have a lot of tension come in when you guys are basically probably kind of going against TSM. So I think at that point in time was not necessarily reasonable, but I can understand the reasoning why they did it. You know, it's not like something I would like. I myself made some statements that I wasn't particularly against you, but I was against Thorin mainly, where I just called him a shithead, kind of like on my Twitter. So that happened too, you know. But I at that point in time was not reasonable to do it, but I understand the reasoning. That's basically it.
Yeah, I'm intrigued just because of what happened back then, and just looking at it now and listening to what you're saying, it does add a lot of perspective, obviously.
Yeah,
and I agree with.
It's a lot easier to understand, right, when you hear these reasons.
But you understand that, you know, the easiest way to solve this problem, Amazing, at the time, just say what you're saying now.
Or some of it, at least, maybe not.
Yeah, not all of it, but
okay,
some of it.
I can give you perspective on why that probably didn't happen. So you have to imagine Thorin was on Red, like basically Thorin instead of Reggie right now. Just imagine like that situation that Thorin and Reggie swap places. Yeah. Do you think Thorin would have just like be reasonable about it? No, he would have fucking given you guys shit for that too. He would have like been really defensive about it. Like, there's no way that Thorin would have been like as in like he would have not approached you guys and be like, yeah, I think you guys are like not right about it, and I think this is actually what happened and everything like that. So can you please like correct?
No, he doesn't mean to come to us. He means to do like vlogs that talk about this stuff in public.
But
sure.
I mean, it probably felt more like sucking up to you guys and sucking up to your forced public perception on us than anything else. So I don't think they wanted to bow down to that. And the whole us against the world kind of thing was actually there. It was actually there. It felt real. It felt extremely real.
It's clear, but you understand that's very abnormal. The behavior of the team was very abnormal. And it continued to be abnormal for a long time. I don't think that the way TSM presents itself currently is weird. I think that they've been doing a good job, and that they've become, as an organization, much more professional. But a lot of this behavior was very childish.
Well, the funny thing is, Monte, if anything, it's gone the other way now, because since they started doing that reality TV show, in fact, actually, that's your answer there, by the way. The real reason why they made the public post is because everyone had saw those reality TV show episodes, and they were like, oh, I guess like Reggie's taken over for Loco now. So I think they just wanted to clarify it, like it was cat was out of the bag to some degree there, because if you remember, Reggie just literally walks in at one point. I think I'm just going to take over the team now and start like coaching him.
That was later. That was much later.
No, that's what I mean, though. That's why I mean now it's different. Is because I think they've gone the other way on that. Now it's like almost full disclosure on a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting, right?
I think they've gone too far the other way, actually, myself. I would
agree.
still keep some things internally, you know. Like, for example, I agree with you. Like, I think you kind of like humiliate a coach if you tell everyone publicly. By the way, this guy isn't like really the coach anymore. In fact, he's kind of just doing nothing right now. Like, even though I get what you might be doing there, some people's personalities won't take on more.
Do you know exactly what Loco Doco did? Like, do you know what maybe like it's just assumption at this point. Imagine he brings he doesn't wake up for practice. He doesn't coach the team properly. Yeah. He doesn't give a shit anymore. Maybe that actually happened, and people in the team felt that. Like, okay. The thing is that I can assume a lot of things, and so you guys are assuming a lot of things too at that point, you know.
All right, just to be extra clear here, we're not trying to insult Loco Doco. We don't know anything about this situation.
No, but
this is purely hypothetical. I just want to put that out there.
Yeah, okay,
Nolan, we're not saying anything.
Good.
Okay, great.
No, it's just how it is, because like there must have been reasons why they felt forced to do this statement. And I can see reasons why. I can see parallels to the split that we ended in. Like, Loco Doco still did a lot of things, but Reggie just did more. Honestly, Reggie just did a bit. Sure. He just did way, more. He was more on time for practice and everything. He was bringing more energy into it. So potentially Reggie at that point felt like that he was actually the better coach and was more suited for the team. And actually telling Loco that he's not doing the job that he's supposed to do. I think that's basically the main reason, that they want to tell Loco, you're not doing your job right, you lost authority over the players and everything like that. So, and you know why, Loco? You know why you did it? Why you lost it? So things are happening now, and it was basically just to ease the transition into kicking Loco too, and removing him from his duties.
Here's the thing. This is actually what's funny, is this is another area where Monte actually said this really early on when Loco became a coach. Loco got super offended by it, but it actually ended up hypothetically being the case, which is Monte suggested that it's unlikely someone who's young. I think he said I think his cutoff age was like 25 or something. So he said any coach who's under 25, like he suggested in general people shouldn't do that. Like, it's probably unlikely that person's like mature enough as a person and they're going to be professional. And here's the thing. I'll give you a sports example to make this not about Loco Doco, okay? Imagine in a sports team, like a proper professional football team, you have a coach who's the same age as like most of the players on the team. So let's say the coach is 24 and most of the players are quite young guys, okay? Let's say he's a good coach, you know, during the coaching sessions, he's doing all his stuff, he's running the drills, he's telling the tactics, but on the night he goes out drinking with these guys. He goes out to a bar and they all have a good time, and then some of them are like, oh, should we get off early? He's like, I'll get the next round of drinks in. They're all having drinks.
Yeah.
4 in the morning they all go home, and then next day 9 a.m. they're all there at practice, okay? And everyone's there, but some of them are a bit sluggish, or one of them's 10 minutes late to practice. And then that same coach who was out with them the night before is like, what are you guys doing? Like, what, were you out all night? You're supposed to be on time, you're supposed to be ready to practice, you're supposed to be given full energy. At that point in time, they're going to be like, who the fuck is it? You were there with us, mate. Like, it's hard to respect the guy to the same degree. So the problem is, if the guy's the same age, hypothetically, I can see where Loco Doco could fall into some of these pitfalls where to him he's thinking, well, I'm still doing my job, but that's not going to work the same as if there's like a disconnect between like an authority figure who's like just at work, you know, like your boss.
And you really do, you have to maintain that level of separation too. That's the thing, is that and that can be hard, because there are players that, in my experience, that you tend to like, or that you have a good relationship with, but you always have to maintain a level of separation if you're going to be management or coaching on a team, just because you have to be able to make the tough decisions. And that's, you know, it sucks a lot of the time. It's really like an uncomfortable situation, but you got to do it. And that's why I tend to say that I think coaches should, generally speaking, be on the older end of players and then have an entirely separate relationship from those players. For example, like, I have a very good relationship with Dexter. I really like him as a person. I like hanging out with Dexter. We have a good time together, but you do have to stay a little bit at arm's length when you are actually in a team with that person, right?
No, I mean, the example that you kind of gave, Thorin, is just, it actually, like, in that example, like, the coach is kind of encouraging, like, being social, doing like other things, and like, but the thing is about Loco, I mean, I can actually be like kind of real about it. There were a couple of times when he woke up late for practice and everyone else was up. So it's different. It's like these kind of instances make you less respectable. That's how it is. And then having the alternate option of getting Reggie, who's like he's a man. He's a grown man, even though he's young. He's like 23 right now, or 24 maybe. He's a grown man. He has his own business, and the way that he approaches things is hands-on. So any problem that you think is there, he's gonna fix. He's gonna fix for you. So it made sense that this thing happened. While I don't necessarily agree with the way that went about it, like as you guys don't agree, I know the reasons why, and it's just like right now I have to keep the balance between actually being really real about it and hurting people about it. You know?
I think you've implied enough. Okay, so here's the thing. Let me just categorically agree and state that I also agree Reginald is a man. Right, now then, I have another area I want to... Little Easter egg there. Yeah. I have another area I want to ask about, which is you must know this part's coming, but I really want to know what you're thinking of this. I've always wanted to know what you thought when you said these comments. Amazing. So at season 4 Worlds, first of all, you guys won the lottery because Svenskeren started playing Russian roulette, and as a result, you guys went from what would be an interesting group to a group where everyone was pretty sure TSM's going to get out the group now because Svenskeren can't play half the games. So if you remember, it went like this. Okay, here's the order of what happened. First game against Starhorn Royal Club, they went ham. They went absolutely crazy. They wrecked you. Uzi went mental. Okay, great. Then you played against SK with Gilius or whoever it was. You wrecked them quite easily. You won against TPA. So coming into the second set of round robin, you play Starhorn Royal Club and you win this game this time. Actually, this game was a lot better for you guys. So you've gone 1-1 with Starhorn Royal Club. Now you're going to play SK, and if you beat SK, it's going to be a tiebreaker. Problem is, this is the game where SK has Svenskeren back, and Vayne wins the game.
That game, by the way, that game was one of my least favorite games of all time. So Freddie was playing Swain
top.
And the Vayne, and you guys played like utter garbage in that game, and it was such a fucking ridiculous shit show where like Candy Panda's Vayne was you guys were like in the base like killing their Nexus turrets, and then they managed to kill you and shit. Hilarious. It was an awful game.
I mean, I don't remember it as hilarious, but it actually hurt. It actually hurt. So to give you my perspective on it, like again, scrims and everything like that don't say everything, but there was a reason why we scrimmed Samson White basically almost every day. We scrimmed them almost every day because they thought of us as the only Western team that is that they respect, or like any other team that is not Korean, basically that they respect enough to scrim almost every day. So, give me a second. I have to. Fuck my life. I have to turn my phone off. Okay, so anyway, I'm gonna mute my phone before another call comes in. But yeah, we're the only team that they respect enough to scrim more than once, basically. So we played them enough. We played them a lot. We played them to an extent where at the end we won a lot of early games against them, which is surprising because Samson White was so like really fucking good at the early mid game, but we lost most cases in the mid game transition when the Dandy and Madarome came in and they just like wrecked everyone. That's basically how it went. But yeah, to go back on that, like the first game in Starhorn Royal Cup was a game where if we prepared for it differently and properly instead of assuming a lot of things, we had a way better shot because we picked Elise into we picked Elise Valandi, I think. And he picked Rengar, which was something Rengar was something we knew already from scrims because Samson White played it a lot. And we knew the dangers of it, which is why we banned it against Samson White. But we didn't know if Insect was playing at that point. So we had a really cocky pick and ban, assuming a lot of things and giving them the benefit of the doubt. And it's purely hypothetical, but everything like that. But in my brain, I know how this game should have turned out. And it didn't match my expectation. That's just how it is. So we beat TPA afterwards really easily. We beat SK easily, which are just like at that point bad teams, to be fair. Compared to Starhorn Royal Club. And then the second week comes in, and we finally show that we should beat Starhorn Royal Club, which we did. And we even though we did a mistake around Nasha, I think when they got a free Nasha and everything like that, and I flash in, try to smite steal, which was ruining my KDA a bit. But yeah, sure, happened. It's just like. And then we play against SK, which is a game that we should have won. But if you watch the game, we basically had to outperform them in throwing in order to lose that game. And we did. We managed to do it. Someone managed to do it. It's not like with the addition of Svensson that they became so much more dangerous. If you watch a game, it was a lane swap game. Darius walks up against Vayne, gets baited, and dies level 3. And then we dive bottom. We don't get the same kind of trade-off. We die 2 for 1, I think, and we start the game out in a 1-3 basic start where we're basically behind from the beginning, and we managed to claw our way back. It's not like just like where you put it. The Svensson addition made the team so much better. No, it had nothing to do with it, and it's maybe me disrespecting him, but at that point, he was not like a god-tier jungler. Like, no one can fucking say that. He was okay. He was good. He was like...
You were better than Svensson at the time?
In terms of my impact on the map and understanding of the game, yeah, I would say so. Mechanically, maybe different, because at Worlds, at least in the first week, I was on, like, basically in the group stage, I was really... mechanically. I missed a lot of plays that I could have done, and I just YOLO swagged it in terms of trying to replicate what I did in scrims onto stage, and may have looked bad at times, but I also got a lot of first blood. So it's not like it just like I equalized whatever I did, so it just happened to be that way. But yeah, I don't think that the additional Svensson did anything. I don't know why people state like that that because like Svensson came back and everything like that, it was different for us and would have been different for the first week, that if Svensson was there, they would have won or anything like that. Like, I don't even know where the notion comes from. If we played the games 100% as we should have, and we prepared a proper pick and ban at all times, like especially against the first game in Southern World Cup, I genuinely believe they would have made it our groups. And the way that we played against Samsung White in scrims, and the way that we played against other Korean teams in scrims, like Samsung Blue, and which are notorious bad in scrims, but also like Najum White Shield, but also the way that we play against other Chinese teams in scrims, especially in the week preparation before Samsung White, I am 100% certain that would have made at least a semis that year if we prepared properly for pick and ban. I'm gonna give me a second. Actually, I'm just gonna close my door. Right. There we go.
Because here's the thing, though. I always say to someone, like, if a lot of players have the same storyline. They go like, if I'd have done this differently, or it was this one moment that cost me the game. I always tell the player this. I say, okay, for the sake of argument, I'll give you one instance.
Yeah.
So you either get like one moment in a game that you can change, or you get one game you can change. The problem is, essentially, you want to have the SK game back, right? So we'll give you that back.
Okay.
But then you're going to beat Starhorn Royal Club in tiebreaker. Okay. Yeah. Well, we're already pushing it a little bit, but now you've beaten Starhorn Royal Club in tiebreaker. Now you beat EDG in a best of 5. Well, that's a lot of games here. Then you're going to beat OMG in a and suddenly you're in the final, but you already had to win like 8 games different. Like, okay. That's quite a lot, right?
No, sure, and I agree with you. Like, but there's a difference between being there and like just seeing from the outside. The thing is that for example, this last year's Worlds, we were genuinely a really good team. Like, we were genuinely like Origen was genuinely good team because we understood the game at the highest level. Like, even in the SKT series, you could argue that we could have won the first game, and I honestly, like, my EVE performance was horrific. I give you that, but I also was forced to face check a lot, which was also bad. But yeah, the thing is that at that point we understood the game on the highest level. We understood it higher than anyone besides Samsung White, and maybe arguably other, like, 1 or 2 other teams. It's just like I didn't even know. I can't even list the teams. I can't even list the teams because honestly at that point I felt genuinely like the second strongest team at the tournament, and it was heartbreaking for me to see that we lose against SK, which we should have 100% beaten because they had bad individual players. They didn't have the greatest individual players. Based off of that, we should have already won. So there are things that led into that, and I'm just really, really, really certain that we would have made it at least the semis. Like, we would have made it out of quarters easily because any other team than Samsung White was really beatable and extremely beatable. No other team even presented that kind of challenge. And even in the Samsung White series, you could argue if we had a better approach to the early game, like in terms of like lane swap and everything like that, where they 3-buffed me twice, and then the Cinch TPs in game 2, for example, we could have had a better shot for ourselves and maybe make it 3-2 series. We could have challenged them. And there are a lot of things that led into what happened, and I genuinely believe that there was something that could have been if we didn't lose the SK.
Monte, what do you think? Could TSM have gotten first in the group and then gone to the final or semi-final?
I think that they could have potentially gotten first in the group. I don't think they would have made it to the semi-final. I think that just based on what we saw, especially on the other side of the bracket from EDG and OMG, that they just weren't up to the task. And I think that if you just look at the roster at that specific point in time, like Dyrus is still a problem at international events. He always has been. And that I just don't see it as exactly feasible that he was going to be matching up very well with a lot of the other top laners that were competing at that given time. I think it was a major weakness in the team.
I've got to ask you this, Amazing. So you went even further than I thought you were going to go there, because it's one thing to be like SK Gaming, starting Royal Club, and if we play EDG, OMG, you then started like breaking down the Samsung White series. Like, let me just stop a second, right? In that Samsung White series, in the first 2 games, they didn't do a proper pick and ban. They didn't play the way they would play in a normal.
Disagree.
They played the most Do you remember this pick and ban, Monte? Like, yeah. I'll see if I can find it. Game 1 was like scaling champions. Game 2 was like lol, the most scaling champions, all in level 1. Like, they were so abusive. It's like they were trying to style on you.
And Mata said in his Korean interviews that they were not paying attention during game number 2. And yeah, I mean,
neither were we after we decided to do what we did early game. But yeah, like to put it into perspective, it's not like, I mean, it is probably about general fear, but during that series, like sometimes as a player, you have that feeling that you know everything that's going to happen, you're aware of everything, and the only thing that can basically like make your perception of the game and everything like that better, or like your play of the game better, is outside circumstances, as in pick and ban, preparation for the game. Like actually pick and ban, it's the only thing in basically level 1 strategies. These are things that you can set up before the game, and they have nothing to do with the actual game. Like afterwards, it's basically an even game or not an even game, you know? These are the only things you can basically prepare that has nothing to do with your inside perspective in the game, in my opinion, you know? You can have a general game plan and everything like that, but that's, again, like relying on pick and ban. So I think during the first 2 games, and again, like I may sound unreasonable now, but I don't give a shit. Honestly, I don't give a shit. I know that we could have like at least make it more interesting the first 2 games if we decided to have a proper level 1 plan, because getting 3 buffed in both games, and in the game 1 it wasn't that crucial, but we made a TP play when Lupa went bottom side out of, even though he didn't have TP, so you just walk bottom side, which was something that most players wouldn't do. They would just walk out top side again, even though they don't have TP, and just tell their team, guys, you just play careful right now, I don't have TP. But yeah, he just walked up bottom side, and we get a 2-for-1 trade, like, or 1-for-2 trade. So and at that point, like, they keep rolling, do the plays that they want to do, and we've failed to execute a dive top, last boy dies, and everything like that. So it's like I'm 100% certain, and again, I don't give a shit if I sound unreasonable, because I know that at that time, me and Björksen perceived the game on the highest level it could have basically. We understood every concept of like basically especially with the TP situation. Then you had like lane swaps coming in. Then you had roams from mid lane, like get mid party to side lane, getting side lane priority, walking back to mid lane, having mid lane sieges coming in and everything like that. We understood every concept, but like there's always this thing of what could have been, and this obviously like my point of view, you know, like because like I was there, so I kind of like have a couple of things behind the scene. If that series actually didn't happen, like we would have beaten SK, I would have had no doubt whatsoever beating Royal Club again, no doubt whatsoever, and then take it to semis. No doubt whatsoever. Like, and it's again like a thing to agree to disagree, but the way that Björksen and me at that point understood the game, and with additional Last Boy coming in, who was finally able to say what he wanted to say and not needed to like actually think about what he wanted to say, but he just like said it because his English was actually improved at that point. There's no doubt in my mind that would have happened, but I cannot change the outcome of time. The only thing I could do in the end is like to show that I can make it there personally. I can make it to semis and maybe make it further. And I think like by me actually making to semis next year, I kind of showed that I like that my perception of me, myself, and maybe like a couple of team members that obviously I didn't translate, but regardless of that, like that the perception of myself as a player and my teammates is matching with reality at that point.
Okay, Monte, these were Samsung's champions in the first 2 games. So game 1, they had Rise was on Looper, Dandy had Elise, Jace was on Pawn, Imp had Twitch, Mata had Thresh. So that's game 1, and that's the one that goes super balls deep early on in the game.
Yeah, that's like no wave clear basically at that for the solo lanes or for Twitch either. So it's pretty risky.
And then game 2 picks Singed for Looper. Now, let's be real, no one played Singed in the fucking whole world at this point in time for about 2 years. So Singed on Looper, Teleport Singed, of course, with Ghost. Dandy on
it was game 3 was the level 1 engage. Game 2 was the one where they where they teleport styled on you. That was actually an amazing play. That was probably the best play of the whole tournament, honestly.
And game 2 was where Mata was on Janna. Like these 2 games are the ones where they just bulldoze the early game.
But especially that game 2, Samsung White probably pulled off the single best play of that tournament when Pawn solo killed Bjergsen in the mid lane at like level 2 or whatever, level 1. Yep. And then the TP play from Looper where they collapsed on you. It was very surprising that they managed to pull that off, but it was truly an incredible display of teamwork.
I mean, I'd say that if the enemy team doesn't take the blue buff, even though they're 5v4, and your top lane has a TP top, and you don't take the blue buff, and you basically just contest the fight, you're doing a huge fuck up. So if we just take the blue buff at that point, Darius decides to TP top. Again, like it would have been, but I rewatched the series so much that I know every single play of that series because I wanted to like understand why we lost. And if we just did do that blue buff, that play wouldn't have happened.
Of course.
There's just things that it's not like the level 1 preparation is playing into that. And I talked about that. I basically, before game 2, because we scrimped them so much, I knew that we were fanning out every game, like 5-man defense. And so they punished that with how they invaded and everything like that, like late invade with 3-man. So I knew at that point that we had to make something up. So I just said, like before the game, okay, we just walk on that side, level 1, and get a blue buff. I don't give a shit if you have to TP top Darius at that point. So if we just do that, and would have executed on the play, nothing would have mattered. Nothing would have happened. But yeah, they executed them. I don't think it's.
I mean, they executed the reaction to that was beautiful.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. They did what they had to do. They fucked me really hard. I basically had to bend over the whole game. I was like 2-7 that game or 2-9, something like that. And I was basically smiling in front of the camera because there's not like after 5 minutes we knew the game was forfeit. So it's like, like I'm trying to get to the point, but like for me it's like. I know what could have been in every single game, and this frustration that led into that, that frustration that I felt afterwards, after the series and after like playoffs and everything. I mean, afterwards, basically, like made me want to quit. Like made me want to quit TSM. It made me quit because there was for me at that point, I was so frustrated with everything that I just felt like there was like if I go back, it's just gonna be really negative. It's gonna be really negative. I'm not gonna be happy with this.
Why? What were you so frustrated with?
Okay, I mean, I have my own point of view, but I felt like we at times get cocky. Like we got really cocky about everything. It's not like it just like in someone saying, "Okay, we're gonna beat them anyway" or anything like that. But it's more our perception of the other, like a kind of our play, or like maybe of the enemy's play, the expected play, something like that, where we kind of felt like, okay, for example, in the Sound Royal Club, like we just assume things instead of doing what we're supposed to do. Just bend that shit out and it's done. They can't do anything. They can't win the game. And we don't do that because we just assume that we can play against it. And we're not able to. And I felt really frustrated with that. And I felt like I had to change something because whatever I do now, especially with the stress that I was under, like 10 to 12 hours of playing, honestly, at some point, and then like having a bit of free time was at some point too much for me. Like it was not like something that was rewarding to me anymore because our expectations didn't meet reality. So it didn't reward me. It didn't actually reward me to put that pressure on me. Whereas other teams just did less and they got kind of the same result. See, like honestly, C9 is arguable. They actually got the same result, and I honestly believe that they probably didn't work the hours that we did.
Okay, so here's the thing, Monte. The reason why I got the sense when I watched that series that Samsung White was like, "This is over before we even started." So you remember the game that TSM won was Game 3. Right, here's what Samsung White picked.
Okay, that game was what I was talking about earlier.
They picked Mundo, Kassadin,
trolled.
and Tristana.
They actually trolled that game.
They were like,
yeah, they did troll.
We can win with anything.
That was the one where Mata after the game was like basically said that they trolled. Because they wandered into your red side buff, I remember.
No, into their own red side.
Oh yeah, it was awful. I mean, they knew you were there, and they still just like face checked a brush.
I mean, at that point, everything had worked.
No, they were in a brush. I John flagged the brush. They had the option to fight or not. Like, they were not in a disadvantaged position to begin with, but they decided to fight the game, like the play, you know.
Right.
And
that was right. That's right.
And they got fucked. Which is a cocky decision, and I honestly believe that they at that point felt like that the series was over. But I think Game 4 showed a completely different picture. Like, basically that they realized that, well, we're not a run over. They can't win with everything. And Game 4, we actually have a lot of good plays coming in. Like, obviously, the infamous Leroy Jenkins is something that obviously still people are like, oh yeah, he jumped in the base. He could have gotten 2 nips, and just forget the whole good plays that we did throughout the game. That we're down 10k gold and we auto-rotate Samson White. You know, it's not like they trolled at that point, and you can make no argument for that. They just played the game and they got beaten at their own game to a certain extent until the 40-minute mark. So I'd say that they were mildly trolling in the third game, and I suppose they did because game 2 was just horrific after we didn't know what to do level 1. So they kind of felt like we're strategically at a disadvantage, and we didn't know the game as well as they did. But then game 4 showed a completely different picture, and they realized that actually this is getting serious. And I mean, whatever people want to say about that series, and especially if Mata says you were trolling, which I somewhat agree with, but it's not like someone can take away with what we did in the series. And what this basically showed, that if we played like this, especially game 3 and 4, the way we executed about things, if we did the same things earlier in the series and not earlier in the series, but especially earlier at Worlds, and we actually played the way that we should have played, and we could play because we knew from scrims, there was no doubt in my mind that we would have made it to semis if we had another opponent. But yeah, we can just we'll go away from that point, because I think I kind of sucked the energy out of it.
I think it's just that, okay, I'll give you an example, okay? There's quite a famous scenario that happens. A lot of people play Counter-Strike, so I'll give an example from Counter-Strike, okay?
Yeah.
In Counter-Strike, if you're in a 1v4 or a 1v5, it's extremely unlikely you're going to win the round. And so the fact that in your own mind, I'm probably lost this shit anyway, you just think to yourself, well, I'll give it my best shot. And as a result, there is zero pressure on you in that round. You're supposed to lose. So what tends to happen, amazingly, is even though you're 1v5, 1v4, well, actually, the odds are so overwhelming, you probably should just not even get one kill. You should just, because, there's 4 of them, they could easily get you in a crossfire. But what happens is the other team think, well, we're supposed to win this, so they don't play 100% seriously, because the odds on you winning the 1v4 is quite low, and they can do almost whatever they want. But you will probably actually, in a lot of scenarios, get the first 2 or 3 kills. You'll be like, wow, I can't believe I did it. That's because your mind is so focused to the fact that you had no chance to win that you just do whatever you can, I'll get this one right, I can get the other one. But you can't play like that in an evil situation. But in an even situation, they would play super strict, you would play normally.
I mean, yeah, sure, but I can always make that argument. If I lose one game to a shit team, I can be like, yeah, I just didn't take it as serious, whatever it is, sure, we can pretend that happened, but game 4 showed that it didn't happen. It did not happen. And even game 1, they could they were in contention until a certain point, where Samsung White, in the Samsung Blue series, won every game pre-10. Every game was over pre-10 minutes.
Okay.
I would argue, because I think that Samsung White took Samsung Blue much more seriously than they took you, given the history of their interactions as sister teams and what had happened when they faced each other in terms of their head-to-head record from the entire year and the previous 2 best of 5s that Samsung Blue had actually won over Samsung White. So I think that was probably the match that Samsung White really prepared for. Yeah, and that was the match they were really afraid of. Now, should they have been more afraid of you? That's what we can debate. But I think that their play in that series, from having previously watched those teams go head-to-head against each other, that's what I got out of it.
So, okay, let's go to the present day now. So we're in EU LCS now.
Yeah.
So first things first, I want to talk about EU LCS, but I have a question about a tweet you made the other day where you actually suggested, I'll find the exact tweet here.
Was it the San Francisco tweet? I find it try hard now?
No, actually, here we go. It was 13 hours ago. You said, actually, do think that NALCS is stronger than EU this split. I have an easier time understanding their thought processes, less randomness. Now, the reason that's confusing to me
is because I'm 6th place.
No, because it feels like the opposite to me. Like I watch NALCS and I see one really good team and then a bunch that are like average to okay and have different strengths but are all like crazy bad. And then I look at EU and I see a bunch of good teams all battling for the top. So on one level I can understand, right? Like for example, if you asked me which I understand and enjoy more, modern art or like very primitive cave drawings, I'd say primitive cave drawings for sure. Like I know what that is. Like that's a cave, that's a fire, that's a buffalo. I can get that. When I watch modern art, I'm like, what is it to mess? I don't know what any of this is. But I know that modern art is more advanced. Like, why is NALCS stronger than EU? What does that mean?
Okay, for me right now, like for my perception of EUSCS, like it's like this: people trade the first 2 turrets, both sides, and then every game, and at some point one team, like it has been like honestly it's been us against Vitality as well against the recent HK game that we just walk in the priority. Like we didn't understand the micro game at that point because we didn't exert pressure on the other side. And this kind of like play, like where one team just decides to not do the obvious and do the opposite of what's obvious, has been happening in USCS almost every game. We can think of the Splice Fnatic game where Gamsu just walks through enemy inhibitor turret and is like, guys, I'm pushing this wave. I'm a Maokai, you know? It just, for me, it just feels like that the macro game is not always understood by both teams, whereas I feel like there's a mutual agreement in the NALCS that at 40 minutes, we're going to have an era mid, and but until that point, both teams play to an equal standard. They actually understand, okay, this is a Drake that we have to contest, these are the spikes we have. Like, at least it feels that way for the top teams, you know? But for USCS, it feels like that half of the teams is understanding the macro game on a good level, and the other team is not, which is why I think that overall that the NALCS is actually better than the USCS, whereas I would argue that the top teams in the EU are stronger than the NA teams.
Okay, here's what's confusing me about that, is like what you described there. Whenever I watch NALCS games, we'll take Immortals out of it, because Immortals to me is like a level above everyone else.
Well,
every other team...
I have my own complaints about this. I think that they're kind of overrated, but that's okay.
Every other team in NALCS, every match I've watched almost goes like this. Like, we're in the lead. Well, that's never going to last. Throw the game back to the other team. Other team's in the lead. Oh, shit, they're in the lead. Oh, and throw the game back. It's like every game is a mad, like, whoever has the lead, like, losing it when they're, like, could close the game. Constantly. It's like every game feels like there's 2 or 3 lead swaps like that. EULCS feels the opposite. It feels like both teams are going, one slightly in the lead, and then there's one key team fight. Whoever wins that just wins the whole game. So, if anything, EULCS looks cleaner to me.
I mean, I disagree, because I think like most games are actually one way before that. Like in USS, it's legit just one AD carry not deciding to push the side lane, instead like catching a wave, and you lose all the pressure on the map. That happens like 2 out of 3 games actually. That happens 2 out of 3 games where people don't know how to pressure on the AD carry for some reason, which is like the most obvious thing to do in the world. Which is why I feel that the USCS is kind of weaker, like as like overall. I think that the top teams are still better than the NA top teams, and I'd say that like we'll have IEM coming up anyway. You know, we have Fnatic in Origen coming there, which are not top teams anymore. But
it's okay. Nobody's sending the top teams but China.
But yeah, like it's gonna be fun to see if my theory holds up. But I just legit think that the way that NA, at least to me, approaches the game has a more not like Korean style, because that will probably offend like someone here on the show.
Okay.
But like they basically copy whatever has been working in Korea, put it into the league, and they just have worse players. Like that's basically what they're trying to do. So I think that the overall knowledge of the game, or like overall structure in the game, is probably more refined because it's based off of something they copy, so they can't fuck it up unless they really want to, which sometimes happens, but that's out of the question. Whereas EU tries really hard to innovate themselves by like the top teams just dictating whatever happens in the region, and no one brings outside perspective coming in. So like unless you copy the top teams, which like obviously the bottom tier teams are unable to do for some reason, because they don't even get to scrim the top teams anymore, because like they don't want to scrim, and it's just like that at that point they don't understand the game anymore, because they have no one that is leading them, and they have no outside perspective coming in. So EU, whereas right now I think that overall like the league is weaker, can end up stronger because they decide their own meta. Just like last year, Fnatic kind of dictated the meta in EU. Like it's just happened to be that way. So at some point, EU is going to be its own force. Korea is going to be its own force, and NA is going to be like a copycat of Korea, just worse. And
so when you say NA, like which teams are we talking about here? Like
every team besides Immortals, because Immortals doesn't like they don't abide the rules.
They don't copy. Yeah, they
so
do weird shit.
You think Team Liquid has a really good macro sense of the game?
I think they have a decent macro sense, more so than what plays Team Liquid right now?
Who plays for Team Liquid, did you say?
Which place are they on right now? Like 5th, 6th, 7th?
Oh, which place?
They're 5 and 6. They're 6th place.
They're 6th place. I think they have overall equal understanding of the macro game to us right now, I'd say.
Okay. And what about TSM? You think they have a good sense of the macro game?
I think they have a decent sense, but I feel like this episode I'm going to spend shit talking TSM, but they lucked out. They lucked out in a couple of games where
it's weird when you're not in TSM and you see making mistakes.
They definitely lucked out on a lot of games. Although they have been looking better recently.
Yeah, they have been looking way better, and I think that Hansa is someone.
I mean, we were styling on them for a lot of one game, and if we hadn't thrown it at Baron, we would have smashed them. Like they were getting utterly destroyed.
Renegades coming in.
It's not like I'm not here to say the
words, but we decided to lose against TSM.
But the point is that we're not the greatest team ever, and to say the least, and to suffer that kind of early game loss. And TSM was definitely lucky in a lot of their games earlier in the season, but I do think that they are slowly improving.
No, I think that they're gonna be a top team at playoffs. I think gonna be a contender for it because like. The way that I've seen Immortals play is extremely
oh my god! I mean, even the game that they played against. So, by the way, this show has been recorded on after the first day of the NALCS. So, Renegades just played Immortals, and I couldn't believe their draft, and also the way that they played against us, which was so cocky. And they were making a lot of really stupid and overly aggressive mistakes and decisions, and that's where I really. The way Immortals plays is so weird, and we were talking about Wildturtle a lot earlier in the conversation and how he would get bored and go over-aggressive. Well, they've solved that problem by just giving him Janna or Soraka every game so he can continuously do that. But I don't think that's a long-term solution for this team because I still think the way that Turtle plays the game is fundamentally wrong, and he's just not punished because the teams in NA are not good enough to punish him.
I don't disagree. I think for Immortals, what I've seen, like again, I feel like I'm sounding like a hater this entire episode, but I feel like that they just assume that the enemy is worse than them. That's basically how they play the game. That's how they approach pick and ban. That's how Rainover approaches his jungle invades. That's how Huni approaches his lane. The only one that I feel like is intrinsically playing the game right is actually Pobota. Like at least when I watch the games, I feel like he understands any point that what the enemy can do, what he can do, and he balances those things out. So he's always going to be having a consistent performance. Whereas I feel like if Rainover and Huni run against better players, or like at least equal to them mechanically and like in terms of game understanding, they will lose out. And so far in NALCS, there's no one. And even arguably at Worlds, there were not many players that could match up against even Rainover because like there was no one that like at Worlds there were only shit tier junglers actually at some point, you know, they left.
Yeah, well, jungle was a very weak position at this year.
Wait a minute though. You're saying like okay that the players are just worse. TSM's roster is fantastic on paper.
I disagree.
What's bad about TSM's roster?
I mean, I think that they have top tier talent. Like mid lane is honestly probably the best player in his role in the West. Like Bjergsen is really fucking good. And I have no doubt that he's going to continue to be fucking good in the next year, you know. I have huge respect for him because I played with him. But I think that arguably Doublelift and Yellowstar are not a top tier bot lane. I'd argue that. I think that if you have Western examples like for top tier bot lanes, I think that Nirza and Mithy are above them. I think that Hjarnan and Casting can give them a run for the money. I think that Forgiven and Thunder can give him easily run for the money. Like those three bot lanes are already in my head better than them, and it's not like that the individual players are way better or whatever it is, but they just synergize way better. it feels like Doublelift Yellowstar is just a different version of Reckless Yellowstar, because it's basically just like Doublelift and Yellowstar don't really win lane. They don't really crush lane. Yellowstar has never done that, and he will never start doing so. He's someone that is concentrating on macro play, which is why I think that the individual players technically are not as strong as they seem to be. If we go to Hansa, I think he can give Huni a run for it. I think he's really good, actually. And I think Svensson is someone that he's just exchangeable jungler. He's someone that could have been someone else. You know what I mean? It's not like he brings an extra value to the team, an extra asset to the team. He's just a jungler. He could be replaced by Jungles, he could be replaced by Shook, he could be replaced by Rainover, he could be replaced by me. And maybe even by a Trick too. Like, if you have these junglers coming in, like, it's not like he adds an extra asset. He's just one of the good junglers, but he's not the best.
You mean Svenskeren, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I think some of the junglers you listed would actually be upgrades on Svenskeren for various reasons. I guess the surprising thing is, like, we were under the impression that part of the reason why Yellowstar would be added, and not only because of his results and his fame, and of course his skill, mostly roaming. I don't think he's a very good laner, but when we talk about shot callers, we thought that's really what TSM needs, because, as you said, you left the team as you were starting to shot call for them, and Bjergsen really needs to have the shot calling burden relieved from him, and I don't think he was ever a particularly good shot caller at any point in time, which is understandable given the fact that he was super hard carrying that team. I mean, he had Wildturtle and Dyrus at some of their lowest points ever, right? This is a guy who was Bjergsen against the world. And to have that guy have to shot call too is just fucking ridiculous. But the changes that we thought would happen with Yellowstar, they haven't really happened. The shot calling hasn't been there. It's been really bad, honestly.
Season 5 teams have not, like, besides Brock's Tigers, none of the Season 5 teams that was really successful, like, actually translated their shot calling into the season. At least that's how I feel.
TSM replaced almost all its players.
I mean, Yellowstar has been a shot caller for Season 5 team that was successful, though.
That's true.
I have a theory about Yellowstar, though. You want to hear it?
Yeah.
So, okay, here we go. People forget that it's not like last year was the first year Yellowstar was a shot caller. He was the shot caller in Fnatic in Season 4. So I have a little bird in Fnatic who once told me, interestingly, before Season 5 started, because I'd always talked to the Fnatic players, and some of them I've known a long time, and I would always say to them, like, how come your team is so, like, they were, at the time, they were still like the classic Fnatic with Soaz and Eke, where, like, they would just do, like, amazing mid-game plays that would just get them back into games, and they just win games out of nowhere, and you would be like, this doesn't really look like great shot calling, like, whatever's winning them these games, but they would always say, no, Yellowstar's the shot caller. And what's funny is whenever I talk to Soaz and people like that, he would actually say stuff like, what happens is in the games we lose, like, Yellowstar's, like, for some reason he just loses confidence and he's not shot calling as much anymore, and then we just lose the game. And then what's funny is I thought, like, okay, but so maybe it's Yellowstar, like, is inconsistent as a shot caller. He has some confidence issues. But someone in Fnatic at the end of the year told me, like, we're going to build the whole team around Yellowstar next year. And I was like, yeah, but why? Like, he's not an amazing support player. Like, it was in an extremely good team. He's a good player, but, like, why is he the main guy? And they were like, because he's, like, the best shot caller. And I was like, I don't really see that, like, I didn't see that in the team. And they were like, no, we see what happened was he used to have really good shot calling, but in Fnatic, they would only listen, like, half the time. Like, the half the time they were listening, it was going awesome. Then if Xpeke or Soaz decided to do something else, they would be like, no, we're just going to do this instead. And they were, like, the leader voices in the team, so they could, like, short circuit what he was saying. And if they said that, he'd be like, oh, okay. And then they'd just do whatever, right? So Season 5 comes along, all those players are gone. He's got no veterans. At the time, he didn't even have Reckless, if you remember. He had Steelback. He has Steelback, Febiven, never even played in LCS before. He has Huni, brand new player. Rainover's played, but was considered bad. Yeah. So he's got a totally new team none of them have authority over Yellowstar. So now Yellowstar shot calling, everyone's listening to what he's saying, everyone's doing what he's saying. He's got a new coach who's implementing it, like Yellowstar decides what we do all this stuff. So the whole season, it's wicked. He's shot calling all over the place. Now he comes to TSM. In TSM, Bjergsen used to be the shot caller. So if Bjergsen has an impulse in the game, he wants to do something else. You've seen in some of those episodes, if you watch the mic checks or the TSM Legends, sometimes he just says, no, I'll do this instead. Yep. He just decides for himself. Likewise, Doublelift. Doublelift's someone who has his own opinions on how the game will be played. It feels that Svenskeren's a guy where he it's like all these different members, they're not like rookies who are just going to take everything Yellow Star's to get. So that's my theory anyway. I think the problem is Yellow Star's not a really decisive guy who like imposes authority. It's more like he gives you the shot call, and if you do it, great. If you don't, he's not going to like force you to stay on track. That's my theory anyway.
I see the value in that theory too, because just as sort of an aside, I mean, I can say from experience that with Doublelift, one of the weirder things about him as a player is that during scrims, he will not shot call, but in an LCS match, if you get the comms, he will start to like add in shot calling. Maybe he doesn't do this anymore, I don't know, but he will start shot calling in professional matches, even though he doesn't practice shot calling in scrims very much. So that's like a weird aspect of Doublelift that could add some credence to your theory.
I mean, what do you think, Amazing?
I think it's way more like it's pretty simple actually. I feel like that Yellow Star is someone that even though I honestly don't think he made like all the shot calls and everything like that for Fnatic, because I know how Source and Pekka communicate, and I know that Source especially is someone that will always speak his mind. You know, will always like if he sees a play, he will just tell the team. You know, it's not like that Yellow Star was had the monopoly on shot calling. It was like the god that made everything happen. But I think on TSM, especially, even if like the plays that he wants to do probably are not being necessarily followed through because of what he said. That I think that they have a lot of approaches to the game and they have to match them up, which is why I think that right now TSM like is a team that is not that great, but they're gonna be really good if they fix everything. If they fix everything, then like maybe this individual play will follow through and they will actually show up and please everyone and be the best team that they can be. And I have no doubt that they will actually achieve that. But yeah, I don't think it's like, for example, Bjergsen telling Yellow Star, no, this is wrong, I'm gonna do that and everything like that. It's more that it should honestly be that way, that everyone should gel with one another and try to find balance in the shot calling, that it shouldn't be based upon one person. And Yellow Star bringing some kind of leadership or like basically another approach to shot calling is just a good thing for TSM. I don't think it's like something where they have to listen to him or anything like that. It should be something where they balance it out and find basic balance in the shot calling. And if that happens, it's going to be different for them and it's going to be a really good team.
Okay, but here's the thing. Essentially what I'm saying is TSM now is Season 4 Fnatic for Yellow Star. Like, he's just another voice who makes shot calls. He's not the only one.
But even in Season 5 Fnatic, he was not the only voice.
So who else was that?
Whoever brought that up is like basically what I felt like Season 5 Fnatic was trying to do is to build up Yellow Star into this thing, you know, this protagonist leading the story. You know, and I know that Yellow Star is a very mature person. I really respect him, and I know that Mithy respects him a lot, because Mithy, the only thing he has been talking about ever like when Yellow Star left was like, shit, now I've no one to look up to, because he looks at his habits, he looks at his approach to the game, he looks at his value to the team as a team member. Like that's what I think that Yellow Star brings. It's not like something where he's just gonna lead the team. It's gonna be like, okay, now everything works if you listen to me. He's gonna be the guy that is making people gel with one another. And I think that's not 100% happening on TSM quite yet, whereas I think it will happen if, like, actually there's no if, I think it's going to happen. That at some point they're all going to gel, and like, Yellow Star was the primary shot caller in Fnatic, which he was, but he was also led by voice of Huni and Rainover, like that actually did a lot. And
I think we can see that now too, because if we look at Immortals, the way they play the map is actually quite good a lot of the time when they're not being overly cocky. When it gets to the mid and late game, their mid and late game shot calling is pretty solid. And that, I think, is a result of Huni and Rainover. And so I think at this point we have to question how much their contribution to Fnatic was, because at least they have been able to replicate the scenario that we saw from last year, where we split these members up from Fnatic and the shot calling isn't there for TSM for whatever reason, but it does seem to be there for Immortals.
I mean, I wouldn't be that cruel about it, and then just like say that Yellow Star did like almost nothing.
No. I'm not saying it's black and white. I'm just saying that, and I think that Thorin's point about Bjergsen still throwing in a lot of these shot callings, and my knowledge of Doublelift's tendencies at times plays into it as well. There's going to be multiple factors to affect this, and who knows how forceful.
I mean, if I had to tell you, like, Okay, my opinion of shot calling is this: you're gonna tell the team, okay, we're playing towards top side now. We're playing for second to top. Everyone individually for their role should be able to, afterwards, speak the things that they need to say, and they need to be able to see what they have to be for their role. Like that's basically how I perceive shot calling. It shouldn't be like something where a player's like, okay, micromanaging like the high perception where he's gonna be like, okay, you just stand there and you put the binding like in 3 seconds, you shoot it, he's gonna run in and then we kill him. This kind of shit is never happening.
No, but the point is there is someone who makes the decision.
No, but the decision is not like everyone of the players should know what to play for and how to play for something. It's not like that Bjergsen just tells them that like, okay, you play for we play for mid now and everything like that. This is like not even like the gist of it. It's just like that. I feel like that even if the shot calling is there, I feel like that a couple of individual players, which is like an issue I have Origen too, that sometimes we just don't know where to be exactly. And I think that's basically the issue. That like actually the macro understanding of the team more so on the shot calling is an issue. And I see that when I have like my Origen comps that for me, for example, right now, I actually lost a lot of shot calling worth. I don't understand the game on the highest level anymore, which is bad, but it's something that happens. You go through once in a while that you like have to relearn the game and you have to reevaluate a lot of things. And I know that's happening right now, and I think I'm getting better at it again. But I know that Mythic, for example, is someone that understands the game at the highest level, and I don't really know, or I assume that maybe I don't know the game as well as he does. So and that's something that I actually know, that I don't understand the game as well as he does. So what I'm trying to say is that even if he makes a shot call, I would not be understand it in the same way that he understands it.
Okay.
And I think that's actually what is holding TSM back, that they don't understand if there is like a shot calling, if there's actually shot calling by Red Star, that they don't understand on his level,
Okay.
If he happens to be this guy who always knows what to do. And because I can just base it off of my own experience, because this is happening in Origen.
Okay, wait there a sec. Here's one problem I have with this whole discussion. Every time I hear players talk about shot calling, somehow players think shot calling means talking. Like players think if they say, "Oh, I could go in 2 minutes," that's shot calling. That's not. That's giving information. Everyone should do that. I agree. But here's my problem. Reginald in TSM Legends said he wants everyone to be involved in shot calling. He wants everyone to know what to do. Everyone to make. That is impossible as far as I know from the history of League of Legends. Think of this. How the fuck is Doublelift going to make shot calls? How is Sven Skaren, someone who's famous for not being a very cerebral player, going to make shot calls? Remember, shot calls is like, now we're going to do this. Okay, go in now. Attack now. Okay, meet me here. Like, they're not doing any of that shit.
Or lane assignments, right? Because I think what you're alluding to, you can tell me if I'm wrong, is that one of the things that you're struggling with on Origen right now is lane assignments. Because the thing about these lane swaps right now is that you really have to take into consideration a lot of the factors surrounding matchups and farm and everything like that to maximize. And it's really hard to do that. But somebody has to make that ultimate decision in the lane assignments as to, with the information that you have, everyone should be feeding information, of course, about the status of their lanes and the status of their itemization. But at the end of the day, somebody has to make a decision about who goes to which lane and when.
I don't think so. I don't think that anyone, like that the shot caller should say, you go there, you go there. That shouldn't even happen. That should be something that you should know by heart. That's why I think that Reggie talked about having everyone shot call on the team. What he basically means is that everyone is able to win the game off of themselves. Basically make things happen.
That's a lovely dream. If it could exist, but how would that exist?
It's not a dream. It's not a dream, and I know this because I know that when, for example, last year at Worlds, every time we said something, it was basically understood by everyone. Like the only issue that we had is like playing around top. We had the issue where I left the source alone a lot of the times. And neither of us was able to recognize that issue early enough in the Worlds run, where we didn't fix that issue. So Pekka was able to shot call for himself. Niels was able to shot call for himself and basically like say what he needs to win the game, and so was Pekka. And Mithy was able to shot call for himself, whereas me and Souls kind of struggled with one another. Like that's basically the thing, that everyone knew how to win the game off of themselves. Besides like me and Source, like I was basically supportive jungler anyway. So after the early game, like if the early game doesn't function well, I'm gonna be like a bit behind, or like, which is fine to me. But to make my point is that Pekka, Niels knew how to shot call for themselves, even though they were carry modes. So I honestly I think I honestly think that it's possible, and I think it's the only way how to make a Worlds winning team happen right now, in my opinion.
You think Koreans all know? Every person knows how to win the game by himself?
I hope they do. I really hope they do. But I think that Samson White knew. I think that SKT knew. I think the only one that was... No, actually, SKT knew too. I think that...
So okay, Ku Tigers made the final. They are the only team to win a game of SK Telecom. You think that Heojong knew at all times how to win the game?
No, I don't think so. Which is why they probably didn't win Worlds.
So TSM this season is going to get to a better level than Ku Tigers in terms of shot calling. Everyone on the team.
If they make their promise happen and everyone is able to understand the game on the highest level while maintaining basically a carry type of approach where they know how to win the game of themselves, it's possible. It's not like Ku Tigers was out of the world good or anything like that. If it honestly is again an if scenario, if Fnatic doesn't throw the first game and throw an 8k lead, it was entirely reasonable for the Fnatic to not tilt off the face of the earth and win the series, which I think they should have. I expected Fnatic to win. I hope they will lose, so we're not the only European team that drops out. But I knew that they had it in them because we scrimmed against them and we knew how good they were.
You know, there's a saying, right? It's an American idiom. It says, if wishes were horses, then beggars would ride. And that's the West view, right? Every world is like, what if? You know what Koreans do? They point to a trophy and they go, yeah, we won that.
Yeah.
And they go, no, but you would have lost it. No, I actually won it. It's real. You can take it out and everything.
So you don't think that okay, maybe the issue is probably that you don't that the Koreans are less vocal about the what ifs because they just don't have the same access.
They don't say that ever.
They also don't need to.
It's not culturally
they do need to. Yeah, exactly. I think that's more the issue. I don't think they don't need to because if you think about the things that Koreans have fucked up, like Ozone 2013, they basically at that point the only thing they could basically say for themselves that they're ashamed. They're ashamed of their performance. Yep. There were no what ifs because the way that the game was approached by them was fundamentally wrong. It was not like they knew the game as good as other teams. They didn't. They played with a mid laner that didn't understand the meta at all, so they didn't play the game on the highest level. It's over. That's basically it.
Okay. But here's the thing. If this was a computer simulation and every player in the game was all good to an equal level, I would agree. The ideal would be everyone makes all these autonomous decisions that somehow fold into a coherent approach that everyone understands. They're all on the same page. That would be perfect. The problem is, what's confusing me is not only are you saying this is the right approach, but you're saying this is what teams should do in the West. Well, let me give you an example. How is Reginald going to make his team do that when, as far as I know, no team ever in the West has been able to accomplish what you're saying?
By having the proper coaching structure coming in and the players that are maybe capable of doing that. And what you said about that TSM probably has the best individual players, they have a really good individual roster. That's what you said, and I agree. I agree that they have a good individual, not the best, but I think that each one of their members is capable of being able to understand the game on the highest level if they want to.
You think Doublelift could understand the game on the highest level
if in the proper coaching structure and everything like that? I think he can. I don't think he will reach the same kind of status that honestly. Let's take Niels as an example. I think Niels is besides for example recently, I think, which just happens once in a while, I think he's the best AD carry in the West. I don't think there's any question about it because he understands the game on the highest level. He understands the game.
Wait a minute. So you think Niels is far ahead of Forgiven?
I think he's way better than Forgiven, yeah, in overall game sense. I think
when I watch Forgiven,
I think individually it's different. Because I think Forgiven really plays the game on a really individual level. He plays the game Counter-Strike-esque, almost, I'd say. Where he sees things that he has to do. He's going to execute them. He's going to kill that enemy. He knows exactly how much damage he's going to do at any point of the game. He doesn't try out things. He just does things. But I don't think that Forgiven intrinsically will understand any kind of meta shift if it doesn't cater to him.
So here's the confusing part.
I agree with that. Forgiven is a spectacular player, and he's a very good player, but just brilliant at team fighting, brilliant mechanically, brilliant at keeping cooldown timers in his head and knowing when spells are available so he can dodge it. But I would say that his sense of the macro game is not great.
See, that's confusing to me because I think the one thing you could say about Forgiven that you can't criticize is his macro as an AD carry. Like, he's nearly always in the right place.
No.
He's never off getting farm when his team needs to do the fight then at that point in time. In the fight, his sense of, like, threats is incredible. He knows exactly how many catches the opponent has, what they've got up. That's why he never mispositions in that sense.
No, but that has nothing to do with Marco play. What I think, like, I played with Forgiven and was probably a different person at that time.
Sure.
But if things didn't happen around him, they didn't happen. Like, basically, he basically forced his team to play a certain style in order to accommodate whatever he wanted to do. It's not like that he is at the right place. He makes his team be at his place. And that seems to be the right place in most of the cases if they're winning. If they're losing, however, it will seem really bad and really self-centric. And if HK decides to falter down, which I think that may happen, because like it will, like, so far every Forgiven team, like, no offense to him, but they have been good in the regular season and they've sucked the playoffs.
Yeah. No, I agree. And here's the thing. I even said this to him. I said, to be fair, as good as you've been, like, very consistently good, I said, you have lost the big game every time, essentially. Every time it's like the big pressure game or even the big match in a season, you tend to lose. Yeah,
and it's not like necessarily up to him, but it's like as soon as the meta shifts slightly and he's able to play his style, I think his value as a player degrades by a lot. I don't think he's bad individual. Like, I think he's an addition to every team besides Origen. I think he could be arguably like for Fnatic it's kind of arguable. I don't know, kind of sure. I think that Reckless is a really good team player, so I really value him, and he's not bad individually. Actually, he'd be upgrade for anyone besides Fnatic, Origen, TSM, and Immortals, and arguably C9. C9 is like kind of the wild card. I'll probably leave one team out right now, which I don't think of, but I think these teams he would not be a great addition to, simply because they already play a certain style and they have established a style, and it's really not something that's reliant on the AD carry. Whereas HDK, I think, plays really AD reliant.
Okay, so you don't think HDK's... It sounds you've just said HDK might fall down soon. So you don't think HDK is the best team?
I don't see them as like a thing that I would like. I wouldn't be afraid of them in Summer Split. Like, when it comes Summer Split, I wouldn't be afraid of them, because I think at that point their play is exposed, and I think it's already starting to be exposed right now. Not necessarily as strongly as it should be, but I think if teams get better and get a better sense of the macro game, which by again I think that the USCS is kind of like not that great sometimes, is that they don't like, if the macro game was understood by every team equally, then his like revolutionary play, which he puts up every day, is just gonna be equalized, or maybe.
So it's the macro is where they've been exposed?
No, I mean, I think that if they continue to play the way that they play, which I think is like, I think they, at least from what I've seen, is that HK does a lot of second to third pushes on a long lane with solo Forgiven and everything like that, which like he basically takes farm from the top lane and pushes out waves, which the top lane should push out, is something that if that doesn't happen again anymore, or like people don't to punish that, he's gonna be fucked, and they're gonna be fucked. I don't think they're gonna be bad, but I don't think they're gonna be a top 2 team anymore.
What do you think, Monte?
I mean, I see those flaws, and we can talk a little bit about Origen's, most recent game against H2K, which would be an interesting jumping off point for this conversation, because in that one, they actually did have a pretty solid early game against you guys, and you, like, Soaz made a bad teleport.
No, it was not. I mean, if I could bring it to the shot calling, I was telling, can we fight here? Can we fight here? Can we fight here? And I didn't acknowledge that we don't have Triforce spikes in. I just made a bad shot call and forced Source to TP and die too. Like, that's what happened. So
yeah, but also
wait a minute. One question. When you say that, when you ask a question, can we fight here? Like, what activates the fight there?
Okay, what activates the fight there?
Who has to say yes, or who has to do something to make the fight start?
No, basically everyone that is involved could potentially be involved in the fight. Like, basically, it's like, I think we can fight here. I think we should fight here. And basically, like, this is like the type of shot calling which I constitute as shot calling, where I'm just giving propositions to the team, and just telling them this is something we could do. And if everyone knows that it's a good thing, they will do it. And which is why I think that 5 players being able to shot call is actually a bad thing. But I actually interrupted you. I'm sorry.
We're actually back in season 3. Cool, right? Okay, Monte, what was your point?
Well, I mean, just around that fight, the fight happened at like 10 minutes into the game, so you weren't even anywhere close to your Trinity Force power spikes. You were just at like level 6. And so as his TP, there was no ward anywhere close for him to TP to. I'm like looking at it right now. And
it was a really bad fight to take.
Yeah. So, but H2K responded to it well, right? That's the thing, is that they turned on the fight. They didn't just leave. They committed to the teleport and actually picked up the kills. And that's the thing, is that H2K, I think, does have a sense of what their limits are in the early game. They responded well to your aggression. I think they responded really well. Now, of course, this game ends up in a sort of Baron throw scenario where H2K overcommits to a Baron and you're able to get back into it. So H2K has been, in general, I think, decent at closing out, but they've also had some roster issues too, obviously, with Selfie and Ryu sort of swapping in and out. They may just be getting reaccustomed to having Ryu on the team. They've definitely looked shakier in their macro game as the season went on. They started very clean, and it's gotten worse since then.
Okay, amazing. What was your thinking in picking Nidalee?
I think,
you know something we don't?
Okay, so Nidalee is a champion that is always going to be 10 to 20 CS above the enemy jungle. Like, you're going to have more pressure on the map, and you're going to be able to, like, especially in lane swap, just farm faster, to therefore hit earlier level spikes, you know? For example, the level 4 spike is really big in most cases, actually, on junglers. Like, level 3 spike is already important, but that's something you will always hit after 3 camps. But the level 4 spike is something that Nidalee and maybe Elise are able to hit before the enemy jungle in every case. So these are the type of spikes that you look for, and then you try to basically impact the map, especially when the lane swap transition happens, where basically the AD carry and the dual lane walks on the other side of the map. At that point, you're going to be level 4, whereas the other jungle is going to be 3 and something, 3.5. And at that point, you can make a play on mid, you can make a play on the dual lane, and you can make a play on the top lane, dive them. There's other 3 things they can do with them. With Nidalee and Elise, especially Nidalee, I think, are things that are not necessarily replicable with other junglers. And what Nidalee also does for a team is just at some point she's going to be overfarmed and therefore be going to be really strong, powerful in teamfights if you don't troll. If you troll and you play a bad Nidalee, which I did that game for the early stages of the game, you're going to look really fucking shitty.
Okay. So the other team I want to ask about is G2.
Yeah.
What do you think of this team? Because obviously they started super hot, and then they had a couple of losses recently. What do you make of G2?
I think they mirror season 4 of TSM a lot. If I had to draw a comparison, I think that Emperor is good to play around, but he's not good to be left alone. I think Kikis is good to be left alone. He has a Dyrus type of role where if he gets abused, it happens, and you can't change it. If he doesn't get abused, he's going to win the game. Honestly, the mid laner at Perks is extremely good, and really great player, and I really respect him. And they just play the same way that TSM kind of played, in my opinion. They play a lot on mid lane, help him to get farm, help him hit item spikes, and then they start the rotations.
I mean, I think the big difference is that between what you're saying is that G2 plays this incredibly aggressive early game, especially with the way Trick is diving people under turrets, and they're starting to get punished for that. I mean, look at the game that they played this last week against Fnatic, where they were 5k gold up at 10 minutes into the game, and yet they overcommitted to objectives over and over and over again until they just gave up that gold lead. And that's something that I had said on the show earlier about G2 and the way that they played, is that their style of play is so aggressive that it's easily punishable, and that they're going to have problems as the season goes on, as people figure out, hey, I can just TP over here and kill them all when they do this dumbass turret dive that they're doing right now. It's just that no one is actually trying to get those punishes off, right? But it is a problem. It's a big problem.
Yeah,
I think they do have. I think Perks is a very impressive player. I think Trick has been having a good season, but yeah. I just think that, I think Immortals' style of play is going to be untenable in the long run. Even if Immortals, just because the thing about Immortals though that's different, I think, than G2 is that Immortals just pound for pound, their players, especially with Huni and Reignover, are very, they're just way better than their counterparts in the same league. I don't think that Perks is so much better than every other mid laner that they can just get away with their shitty mistakes, right? I think Immortals could very well have an extremely good season in NA, but I think that if Immortals goes to MSI, those guys are going to get wrecked unless they fix their problems. G2 has at least more competition. They're not as far ahead in some of their roles compared to other players.
I mean,
they're more vulnerable.
Yeah, The only one that is like, I think that actually Perks is, I wouldn't say he's the best mid laner in EU, but he's like, I mean, honestly, I think he's top 2 like 100%. There's no way that he's below top 2, and it just feels.
Well, I think Raid Over is like, way better than any other jungler than in NA right now. So,
no, I think the way that he approaches the game is extremely interesting. Like, he basically translated what he did at season 5 Fnatic to now. He basically like just the words play that he did, honestly, on Lease especially, Reign Over, was just extremely good. He knew how to pressure just by pressing flash. Most junglers wouldn't even do that. They would play the safe game, and this type of aggression that he showed while maintaining a good mechanical ability is something that is like extremely rare in the West right now, in my opinion.
So what about Vitality? Because they've started to come on strong recently.
I think that I mean, I'm probably going to give them help if I say what I'm going to say, but I think they figured that out for themselves already. But it's the fact that they play a lot with ranged top laners, as in like basically wave clearing top laners. So what their one go-to trick is to, like, after the lane swap happens, basically as soon as you lane swap, you're going to push it to it faster with ranged top laner, and then on the wave that is there, basically. He kills the wave that is supposed to bounce to him, you know? He's killing the wave that is supposed to bounce to him, especially with champions like Grace and everything like that. You push it, and you're going to get level 3. You're going to get level 3 before the enemy top laner hits level 3. And if the enemy top laner then decides to, like, contest anything on, like, basically be on the other side of the map, he's going to be slower on the push out, basically off the wave, and therefore the enemy dual lane is able to get the turret before your dual lane gets it. That's the only trick they've been doing so far. And it's not like something that has been surprising or anything like that. It's really transparent, to be fair. I think that Cabochard is someone that you can play around. He's extremely good, but I think that the style of play that they do is basically like HQKs, but on the other side. At least that's how I feel about it. It's not like they do something like really spectacular. They just have a different priority about it.
Well, even this last week when they played against Unicorns of Love, I mean, I didn't agree with the Quinn mid thing, but if you're going to play the Quinn mid with the Ignite and you're going to play Lulu top alongside that, you have to be able to set up the Quinn split push, and they were never even really able to play Quinn properly in that game. Sure, they won, but it wasn't... I think Hjarnan mispositioned a lot of the time, and I'm saying that when he had Tom Kench to save his ass, and he still was out of position and caught out in the front line way too much. And then they never even got the Quinn split push going. If you're going to take Ignite Quinn, which I do think is viable if you can get her through that mid laning phase, there's nothing that's going to be able to stop her split pushing. But they didn't play the composition properly. They didn't look very disciplined.
I have one more topic. Do you have to go to Scrim soon, Amazing?
In like 35 minutes, yeah.
Okay, right. So the topic I want to cover before we finish with your segment is around coaching in Origin. Because there's a fella called Soaz who's been known to be quite public about his opinions on things. So now, if you listen to Soaz, it sounds like basically... it sounds like Soaz doesn't even know that coaching is a concept that even can work. Like, it sounds like he doesn't think they exist. He actually suggested, like, maybe he even said something along the lines of, like, maybe they do something, but to him overall they're kind of useless. Like, people thinking that, like, they really do set how the team plays and set everything up. So it sounds like he doesn't really believe that concept. Is that just him alone in Origin?
Holy shit, it's a hard question to answer. I think that basically by experience, like, at least like how we felt about the coaches was like this. We around the regular season we had Ducky like last year, and I actually think that he's extremely good as an analyst and scout. He knows how to present data, he knows how to get data, and he knows how to help the team to become better. Like, if they're already like good at self-improving, you know. So he was someone that was really good at that. But he decided to overstep basically what we wanted out of him. Basically, what the issue was with Ducky, and like I can just be blunt about it, is that he tried to become a lifestyle coach, and he didn't need to. There was no necessity. He doesn't need to. We don't need to have someone, like, at least in Origin, I feel like, with a lot of veterans coming in, we don't need to have someone telling us these are the things that you should do in life to become a better player, because each one of us has found success in their own merits and habits and ways. So the only thing we need is someone that basically unites the 5 of us and helps them to progress faster. And honestly, Ducky, if he didn't do what he did, then like basically like we had kind of an animosity towards him, or like vice versa. Was basically like we basically at the beginning of the split were really in touch with one another, but over the course of the split we became not coach and players. We became more enemies than anything. That should never happen, and that's basically what we forced kind of. But it was basically mutual not passive aggressiveness to one another, but a mutual misunderstanding, I'd say. Mutual misunderstanding at some point of what a coach should do and what the player's role should be in the coaching under a coach, and everything like that.
So for a team like Origen, it should be less strict. Like the coach shouldn't be like setting like you have to be always here at this exact time. We always practice this much. We always do everything this way. You always eat this food. Always go to these places. Shouldn't that's too much?
No, I mean, I honestly don't think it's something that is. Like each one of our players is still a person to be like, and you don't have like besides in boot camps, and you don't have the issue in any professional sport that like a coach is basically telling them what to do in their life, everything like that. You have some examples that like are overreaching, like Phil Jackson, if you take him, that like basically teaches his players like basically habits and merits that they can use in their daily lives. But beyond that, there are not many coaches that actually do that, and I don't think it's necessary either. If someone wants to have things coming in for him where he wants to like work out, be more healthy, have something like that he can grab onto if the game's not going well, then sure, he should try to find counseling and try to find information for that. But I think in general, it's not something that you as that we as Origen need in a coach. We need what we have needed and what we've been lacking ever since like the Ducky Hermit thing kind of went down. No, even though Hermit wasn't like quite the analyst and scout that Ducky was. He was just I'd say a people's person. I don't know how to put it, but it's like he just basically achieved unity in the team. I don't know how he did it, but he did it somehow. He just made everyone around him just like feel more happy or whatever it is. I don't know. I honestly don't know. Like if I look back at the time, how he managed to do that. Because
okay, on this topic, people during Worlds, I mean, it's a common trend that if a team wins and a team does better, in a sense, fans just say, "Oh, the coach must have done it." So during Worlds, you saw lots and lots of credit given to Hermit, like, "Oh, he's obviously turned this team around and he's made the team really so smart in pick and ban, and then this is why the macro's good." Like, what was his involvement in that sense? Because obviously he came in very short term, right, to be the actual full coach.
I mean, at Worlds it was different, but like basically, if I just go by the timeline, it was like the Green bootcamp that we had before Worlds was really low in his end. He didn't do much at all. He He just recorded games and kind of basically like made picks and bans with us, basically like that. As soon as we hit Worlds, however, I felt like he stepped up a bit and just basically like researched more for himself and everything like that, instead of just having us self-improve. And he made sure that our picks and bans were really good. Like that he just made sure that on the whiteboard we meet up a day before the game or like a week before the game, and just make sure that we consider our priorities, we consider our pick and ban. I think that's basically what he did. He didn't like point out mistakes or whatever it is. He didn't do any of that. He just basically made sure that we have a good pick and ban coming in. And it's not like he made the pick and ban himself. It's just like that with the given information that we had, he suggested things to us, and we decided to base it off ourselves. He wasn't really a coach. He was an analyst. The guy that I would consider a coach at Worlds was Aaron, who happened to be a friend of ours, who happened to travel with us and basically stayed with us in the team. And he, like, what I consider as coaching in his sense is that he made discussions happen and made sure that everyone felt like they were on the same page. That's what I think a coach should do, that everyone feels like they're working with one another, not against one another. And Aaron is a person that is able to do that, because he's just, the way that he approaches life is just apparently inherently different to most esports players and esports people. Because if I'm being honest here, I think most esports players and people are socially awkward, and they don't really understand life at all, and their horizon doesn't expand beyond the game, which is something that is dearly lacking in a lot of teams, that they need just people in the house, like, that they can talk to, or just like people that understand life in order to help them out in case things go wrong, in case the team doesn't play the way that it was supposed to, and everything like that. So everyone feels like they're working with one another. And esports is not full of those people. We start to see a trend more.
We know all that.
So I'm
that's painfully obvious from every aspect of this industry.
Yeah. And I wish it was different, but that's how it is. So no, I don't think that any of our coaches. I mean, honestly, Ducky was a really great analyst, and I have to give him respect because I think he felt disrespected by our comments. But the way that he approached everything like that until he became overwhelming was really good, and he understood how to cope with stress too. Because I worked with him on Curtain Wing Wars, and it was not the best time in my life. It wasn't the best time in anyone's life when we decide to lose the playoff series, and just everything goes downhill. We just went, but he worked with that, and he was able to work through that. And I mean, most other people are just really socially not interactive, and they don't work. They don't work in a social surrounding, which is esports. Esports teams are social surroundings, and they're not like you just sit at the PC for 12 hours, but it's about the little interactions that you have between the games that are actually making the most out of the games, in my opinion. Like, we can say that giving 100% in every practice game is really important, but I honestly feel like that giving 100% in every discussion, in every social interaction with the team members is way more important than that, because that's going to carry on beyond shifts in the meta and everything like that, because you're always going to be able to come back to that point where you were at.
What do you think about the people who, when Soaz made those comments, I mean, Soaz is like a favorite target of Reddit anyway, but they were like, oh, well, that, it's easy for you to say you don't need a coach. That's why you're like, middle of the table. You're like low down. You guys aren't winning games. Is this not a factor, having no coaching staff aside from like basic stuff in place? It's not a problem for Origen?
I think it has become a problem, but it's not because we lack a coach right now. It's that the 5 players right now are not synergizing the way that they did last year. I think that's the biggest issue. That I mean, I honestly think that's the issue. And if that was the case, where everyone felt the same kind of way towards one another as we did last year, we'd be performing equally. And we're starting to get to the point where everyone understands one another again. Like it's. I mean, the addition of like the difference between Pekka and Power of Evil is that I think that still that Power of Evil is a really good individual player, and I think he has a tough time right now. Like, he just has a tough time because social media is also like kind of shitting on him recently. But I think that as an individual, he can be really good. The thing that he lacks, though, is in compared to Pekka, which is just obvious, is that life experience. And I think if he was able to get to that point where he has been through the same wear and tear that Pekka has been through, I think he can become like an equally great asset to any team. But I think right now, what I feel like is that the synergy between the 5 players is not equal to last year, and I think that's maybe the biggest issue. And we're working on that. We're actively working on that. We're trying to like have more team meetings and everything come in, and I think it's gonna become good come playoffs, because I already feel like the improvement has come in. Where I understand like the macro game, we understand, everyone of our players understands the macro game like somewhat, and it's getting to the one we really understand and we can play off of that. But until that point, like, we have to work hard in order to fix this intrinsic problem, which is like having synergy in the team.
So when you say that the synergy isn't there anymore and you guys are having these issues, you guys only swapped out one player, and obviously you had a really great performance in the World Championship this year and defied a lot of expectations. So can you be more specific about what exactly you mean? Like, what has changed within the team that, with only this one player being swapped out, that you think has made the biggest difference in your performance?
Became more apparent. I think the lack of synergy between me and Soaz that was already kind of there at Words is only now starting to be fixed. That we're not like enemies or anything like that. We're actually good friends outside of the game, and it's just that we have to find a way in order to make that happen in the game too. That we play towards one another and we play for one another. And I think this issue has come up recently where I feel like that he's not given the same chances as Niels, for example, in terms of carrying the game, which should be happening. And Power of Evil is also someone that is less responsive to like talking and everything like that. He's not going to be as talkative as Pekka, who was. So we have to cater to him, and we and find a way where we have an equal balance between the 2 players. So it just feels like that the issues that we have are just something that have been overshadowed by our really good communication last year, and are now starting to become more apparent because of like basically me and Soaz not having the greatest synergy, and Power of Evil becoming a new member of the team and not being led by someone that 100% understands the game. The thing is, if one of our team members, like besides Mithy, basically was able to lead around the team at any point of the game, especially like early to mid game, which is a big issue for us right now, would be performing equally, like easily. But right now, I'm not stepping up to it. So it's also upon me to make sure that everyone in my team is like having the same kind of synergy towards one another. And I actually think that the biggest factor for us losing is mainly that we have no one besides maybe Mithy that 100% understands the game for the whole team.
So here's the thing: if you said that, okay.
Hold on, I have a question about the coaching thing. Then, so if this is an issue for you guys right now, what do you think Origen's ideal coach would look like? Like, what would you and your teammates like to see from a coach if you could get one? Because you've been through so many, and obviously you're actually required to field one, I believe, by Riot.
Yeah. So I honestly think that anyone who just understands basic human needs, honestly, because that apparently is already an issue for people in esports. And if
for you guys, for Origin, you just got done saying that that's not what Origin needs, that you have these veteran players.
I think if I could imagine us working well if, for example, one of our players, like basically me or Mithy, would step out of the basically playing field and just become a coach, as in like someone that understands how to cater to people and understands like the basic concept like of the game at least, and therefore holds other people accountable. Not someone that's going to have authority over the players, but someone that understands the game on an equal level to the players, and therefore is going to be able to see mistakes or like see things that are happening and see trends that are happening, and is able to eliminate them in the process.
So we just talked about Aaronay, and you said that Aaronay really worked for you guys as a coach. Why didn't you just keep him as a coach?
Because the way it worked for Aaronay was that he had other aspirations anyway. Like he didn't want. Like I don't think even if we wanted to, he would have wanted to. And I think that I don't know if it came up, but the thing is that Aaronay is someone that is extremely potent for a short term of time. I feel because he has this huge energy coming in, but I would say that beyond a certain aspect, like if he doesn't actively like watch game 24/7 and everything like that, he wouldn't be able to translate over the course of a couple of months. You know, like where after 1 month, 2 months, he would become worse and worse. But he would still be a good person and like a good people's person, would basically be able to cater to the needs of the players.
So you're just saying that you don't feel that Aaronay, even though he brings in a lot of energy to the team, that he doesn't have the stamina to sit there for an entire year and grind the VODs, because he'd rather be doing something else.
No, I'd say so. Yeah, I mean, at least that's fair. That's my perception of him, and I mean, it's
grinding out the VODs is hard work, and it's not the most exciting a lot of the time. That is pretty much my job, so I can tell you that I don't always get up in the morning and be like, all right, hooray, I get to go through these 10 games today. Yippee.
No, it's even as a player, it's really.
Hey, at least you get to play the game. Yeah, I just watch it.
I mean, like from an outside perspective, it's probably. I mean, it's. If I watch a game that I lose and I have to rewatch it, it's actually pretty bad. But yeah, like I agree. I think it's a really tough job, and I don't think everyone is suited for it, and I don't think anyone is suited for it for a long time. I don't think that any coach could sustain his ability over the course of 2 years. It's really hard. Like it's something that I honestly
Coma has. So,
I think, I mean, is he solo coaching now? Is he the only one doing things for?
No, Bondu's back.
I mean, I just feel like that the support staff is just bigger in like Korea, where like they probably have more people coming in, playing around, like just being around the team, and just so if one guy loses energy, then another guy can pick it up. But that's basically the biggest issue. I think the stamina, like, and having the same kind of energy coming into every scrim and into every day is actually the thing that holds. I mean, most teams back to, actually. Like, it's not just coaches; it's actually a team thing. And I think maybe we've seen that kind of with Origen right now, that we may seem like that we don't want to give it all at every time, but it's something that should be there, and it's just really hard to sustain, like from a player standpoint.
So you said in a tweet that in 9 out of 10 games in EU, someone just misunderstands, well, 90% you said the same thing.
Yeah.
They just misunderstand the macro, and that's the reason they lose. But you said the EU players are better.
Yeah.
So if Origen's lost all these games, does that mean the players in EU are better than Origen's players?
I'd say we don't understand the macro game. Like, I think that's it. I don't think we have worse individual players on any role. Like, I think that Mythinians are still the best bot lane in EU, and I think there's no question about it if they play up to their standards. I think that Source can contend for a top 2, top 3 in EU. I think that Power of Evil has shown promise that he can do that same. And I think that, like, even though I may just be overrating myself, but I think that it would be weird for me to say that I couldn't do that too. Like,
you think you can be better than Jankos?
Could be or should be. Like, I think I should be better than him because I have more words experience coming in. Like, I have just more experience coming in, so I should be better than him. And right now, I'm not, which is bad for my team. But I'm not like really worse than him. I'm just like slightly worse than him.
I mean, I know a lot of players that have got more experience than Peanut, but I'm pretty sure Peanut would rip them a new asshole.
No. You would like.
You don't think so?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so.
Okay, well, you've got way more experience than Peanut, right?
I mean, I honestly, based off of that, I should be able to beat him over the course of a season. I may drop individual games to him, but come players, I should be the better player.
Okay.
And I honestly believe that should be the case for me compared to any other EU jungler.
So then it applies to Trick as well, right?
Yeah, I should be. As I said, I should be, but I'm not doing that right now, which is a bad thing, which is why I feel like I'm kind of disappointing my team. But it should be there. It should be something where I should be equally good, if not better, than any other jungler. I should not be a liability, which I don't think I've come to the point yet. I don't think I'm a liability, but I don't think I'm someone that performs like 100% every game.
Okay, well, we can agree upon that. So, do you have a final statement for this part of the show? Amazing before you have to leave us and go scrim and whatnot. Do you have any parting message for people?
No, not really. I'm fine. I'm good.
Okay. Good stuff. Just leave it there.
All right. Have a good one.
Mate.
Thanks.
Okay, we are back without Amazing now. One thing I didn't know about Amazing that I learned from this episode is very powerful imagination. He's someone who dares to dream the impossible dream. He really thinks many things are possible. He is very optimistic about his own life and where he sees himself in his life, what's possible. I feel like with that sort of vision for life, he's going to go places, Monte. That's how I feel about that scenario. Or, if he doesn't go places, he'll explain how he could have gone places, should have gone places, and if something different happened, maybe he would have gone places. So, there we go. Along those lines, we are back in the episode. So, I still want to talk a bit about the West, because even though we went over some teams, like we barely talked about any matches, for example. So, there's actually a match from yesterday, as we're recording this, that I want to ask your opinion on, which really, to me, fit in line with that thing I said, where I don't understand this logic that like the NA teams have this wicked macro and they understand what's going on at the different points in the game. Because I watched this game of C9 versus TSM, and I don't understand. Like, it's hard for me to give TSM a whole lot of credit as a team after watching that game. What do you think happened in this game? It's like they were behind. They made all these nice players get back in the game, and then it's like at that point in time, is over.
Yeah, I only got to catch a piece of that game, so I don't know if I can really talk to this one yet. I spent most of it today catching up on EU LCS, okay. But yeah, I don't want to really talk specifically to that one in particular because I couldn't give the best examples at this point in time. But in general, I think TSM has had some pretty severe issues in the way that they play the map and their decision making. As well as their team fight. I saw some team fights from that game today, and they were a little bit off in terms of the way they were using their abilities and not really looking very coordinated in those team fights. I just don't think that their shot calling is there. They're kind of all over the place when it comes to how they're going to approach what's going on the map, and it shows.
Like, as of this episode, TSM has only won games against Cloud9, CLG, And that's it out of the top teams. They've only won two games against top teams, CLG and Cloud9. That's it in the whole season.
And arguably they should have. They were not doing well in some of the other games, even against the bottom teams.
Could have lost to Team Liquid.
Could have lost to Renegades.
Didn't play that well to Echo Fox. They had a bunch of games that were bad.
Yeah.
And so that's why I tried to pin him down on what he meant by NA. You know, like it's one thing if he'd said, "Oh, I think NRG is good and Immortals are good and CLG has like good macro." I don't get TSM though. To me, TSM is less than the sum of their parts.
They definitely are. I agree with that. I as I said, I think they've been doing better recently, and but it's still, especially that game against CLG, I think was their best game of the season, where they actually showed that they could snowball a lead and play pretty cleanly. But beyond that, I haven't been really that impressed with any of their matches so far.
Okay. So explain this to me. How does Renegades get leads in these games? Because I'll tell you straight up, I don't even think Renegades is a good team.
Well, I think our record shows that.
No, I mean, I look at the roster and I'm like, this team shouldn't succeed. I look at the way they're playing, I'm like, this team shouldn't succeed. So how do they get the leads?
I think that we do generally a good job when it comes to our lane swapping, and that has gotten us certain advantages. And I think in lane, there have been points where we've managed to snowball advantages from the laning phase very effectively, especially against TSM. We had some good lane matchups, and I think we played the lanes out well. Picking very heavily for lanes in that game, of course, with the Draven into the Kalista and matchups that Freeze is familiar with, and Flares did very well against Hanser with the Rise. I think the biggest problem with the team is that, yes, we can get these early advantages, but it's just when it comes to how to close out a game, there have been so many games where we've had a big advantage and actually gotten the first Baron and lost the game, or had negative Baron power plays, meaning that we get Baron and we lose more gold than we actually have, which is awful, just awful. Either playing too aggressively or playing incorrectly. You know, it's just not good macro.
Because here's the thing, on one level, if you're like, well, you know, we are getting all these leads, okay, it's true, there's something to that. Like, for a bottom tier team to be getting a lot of leads is unusual, but if someone says to me, this team has the lead in a lot of their games, okay, how many are they winning? Oh, basically none. I'd say, oh, that's actually the hallmark of a terrible team. Like, that's proof that you're not a good team if you can't ever close the deal while you have the advantage.
Well, I think the hallmark of a truly terrible team is never having an advantage whatsoever. But yes, I do agree. I think
that's pretty bad as well, though.
Glaring deficiencies, of course.
What do you think then about NRG? Because they've gone a bit off the boil. They look like, to me, NRG early on I thought it was going to be Immortals clear number 1 and then NRG clear number 2. That looked like the way the split was going to go to me, but that seems not to be the way it's panning out now.
No, it's not. And that's really interesting to me because I didn't see the NRG games today. I looked at the picks and bans. I haven't watched it yet where GBM played Karma. And for me, NRG they're just so hit and miss. It's like, I really liked the Zillion game that they played, and I thought they played to their win conditions quite well. And they looked like they may be able to start doing better. And
that's actually the only top team they've beaten, believe it or not, was TSM with the Zillion game.
Yeah, it was, but I think they played that composition particularly well, and I know they won today with that mid Karma, so it looks like they're capable of executing some rather interesting or innovative strategies. I think the Zillion pick really did reverberate. We had seen it picked, I think, in a couple other games. I think maybe one in China and one in LMS, if I remember properly. But it obviously wasn't like a major pick that was under consideration for many teams. However, since that game, we've seen it played by a large variety of teams around the world, and I think it proved that it can be very effective if you build around a dive composition. And I think GBM played that champion quite well. So it just seems like they play one or two compositions at any given point in time and are just sort of mediocre on the rest.
Okay. Did you watch EU LCS?
I've seen a bunch of the games, not all of them.
Okay. So I'm actually surprised how down Amazing was on H2K because, okay, on one level I agree with him. It's true, you do kind of have to build the team around Forgiven to some degree for him to be comfortable and to be performing at his best level. But what I think makes H2K really good is they're one of the only teams I see in all of the West where I actually think they should be one of the most adaptable to all meta shifts, because you look at how well balanced the team is, how well spread out all the talent is. It seems to me like they can win games in many different ways.
I think especially now that they have Ryu back, they have had some hiccups, and I do think that they should have played better with the lead that they had against Origen. Obviously, that Baron call was pretty problematic that H2K had, but I do think that the way that especially Odoamne and Jankos and Vander are playing right now, Jankos and Vander really do have a lot of synergy together when it comes to getting vision control and giving them the necessary information to make those shot calls. And for the most part, they do it well. Sometimes, again, there are issues with that we saw in the game that I was just talking about against Origen. But I think overall that they've shown they can do some pretty interesting stuff, and I wouldn't be as down on them, I think, as Amazing is. I think the question is who's going to beat them. I think G2 is a more flawed team. I think Fnatic is a more flawed team. I think Vitality is a more flawed team than H2K is at the moment.
Because in terms of Origen, okay, there is still 3 weeks left, so there's still some time in theory to get things together, but I think it's getting close to the point where I'm starting to not buy this idea that they're just going to turn it around and we just chill out in the regular season. Who cares about spring split? Then we turn it off in the playoffs, turn it on in the playoffs. We start getting really good then. I'm starting to feel like that's not going to happen. They're looking to me like a team where, like, even if things go well, they're going to make like the semi of the split and just lose there.
Definitely a possibility. They haven't shown that completeness that we've seen from Origen previously. And while I do think Mithy and Sven are a strong lane, or Niels, or whatever you want to call him, it's just not working at the top level right now. Like the coordination just isn't there, and their shot calling early is what got them into the hole against H2K in their last matchup from this week, and it really wasn't. It was more, I think, H2K's mistakes that allowed that game to be close rather than Origen making big plays.
Like, here's the funny thing, is that to me, the whole thing with Amazing about shot calling, in a way, has just told you why Origen gets body bagged in most of these games, except when Sven's super hard carries, and even then still can't win sometimes, which goes like this. Yes, in an ideal world, if what he said was right, let's say every member of the team was on the same page, understood the style that they're going to play, what the win conditions are, what they should do individually each point in time. Ideally, everyone should equally contribute and equally do their separate role part of the game. That would be all great. But if you told me, as he did, like most of us don't know right now the macro style or what we're supposed to be doing, then if you then have 5 shot callers, I reckon you'd probably get this scenario where people don't know what they're doing, all make bad shot calls, and you end up in a complete clusterfuck mess where you can't win the game. That makes sense to me. I think they're where they should be based on what you just told me.
Well, and I had a different opinion than him, which is that you should have somebody collecting the information from everybody, or 1 or 2 players collecting the necessary information from their lanes and then making decisions about lane assignments and what is and is not possible when it comes to objectives such as dragons or baron fights or those kind of attempts to go for. That's my philosophy. I agree that that's an ideal scenario, the one that he painted, but it's just not realistic to assume you're going to have 5 players who are decisive enough. It's just a different kind of skill, right? And we know conclusively that in the past, when we talk about teams like Cloud9, which is a very popular example, that Hai really does control the shot calling on that team. We saw the difference of Hai's presence in the last season in summer. They were on a huge losing streak, looking like they would be in relegations, and then all of a sudden Hai comes back into the jungle. Is he a great jungler? No. Is he even playing meta junglers? Absolutely not. But is he making a huge difference in how that team played and how that team operated on the map and their ability to win games? Of course he was. He was great. He transformed the way that Cloud9 played, and he saved them. And not only that, he made the miracle run with that team to go to Worlds. And that was the one thing they traded out, was getting High back in the lineup, right? But he is a very dictatorial style of shot caller.
Well, I mean, recently, one of those mic check episodes actually had the C9 versus Immortals comms. And if you watch that, he's doing a great job at shot calling. Like, he's literally telling, like, Balls, watch out, don't go in there. I mean, in the scenario I'm talking about, Balls does go in and get completely wrecked by everyone, like 1v4 something. But he's doing a really good job. Like, there's a great moment, actually, when they, like, fuck up slightly at a point, and he just goes, like, hey, Rush, like, don't tilt, buddy. Like, we're still going to be okay in a second. Like, he's doing a really good, like, there's like, this is quarterbacking style of shot calling that you if you could, you'd all want. Obviously, not everyone has a High. We understand that. And also, I'll give Amazing credit in one sense. Since he's the jungler, I can understand why to him it would be great if, for example, jungle and support both did some shot calling. It wasn't just him on his own. And if people give him comms, that's why I feel like people like him keep getting comms confused with shot calling. Because if I'm a jungler, obviously I want my lanes constantly communicating with me. Oh, you could do this in a minute. You could do this, so that then I have my options. You know, I'm not going to go and set up a gank top and find out the top lane I had no plans for that and wasn't ready and didn't want to go in. Like I want all my lanes communicating, but to me that's not shot calling. That's just communication. To me, shot calling is like, who's pulling the trigger on this? Who's deciding the play's actually going to happen? So that's why I joked we're back in Season 3, because if everyone's really like, shall we do this? Can we do this? Are we all agreed? Yes, 4 out of 5. Okay, we go in. Like, yeah, that happened in Season 3. That's why they all got body bagged, all the Western teams, because unless they had flawless, on the same page style of play, Fnatic Gambit style, everyone else was still sat around making those decisions, and half the time having, like, what happens in democracies, Monty, like, split decision, we will have to, it's a hung jury, we will reconvene in the morning. Like, you don't have any time for that. The fucking fight's going to happen in 2 seconds. Are you in or are you out? Like, there's no time for these decision making.
And the fundamental problem is that when we discuss some of these issues, such as, I remember, when I would coach, I think that the one thing that sets you back more than anything else as a team is the can call. Because once everybody has the information, everybody knows that you can do this. You have a choice, right? And so, but the worst use of time in comms is players saying, we can do this, I can do this, I can do this. And this other guy's like, oh, we could do this, we could, can. It's just not. There's no decision that is actually made when you allow that to occur. And so you have to designate some sort of definitive shot call to that situation. And I think that's what most ordinary teams should really be trying to go for.
Even though I've no doubt, as I say this, fans and players will be like, you don't know what you're talking about. The reason I hate that sort of a call, here's what's funny. When you first started doing the CLG coaching and you were listening to their comms, one of the first things I told you is, like, why do the people who are the shot callers just ask questions? Like, that's the part I don't understand, which is essentially what you're saying. Here's the reason why it doesn't make sense to me. If you analyze it, if you're saying, like, can we do this? Well, like you said, you have the information. You know the scenario. If you ask like that, that tells me you're actually not sure whether you should do it. In which case, don't make the call. If you have all the information and what you're suggesting is a good idea, make the call then. You will find out after the game if you were wrong. No one can know the future. So if you have the information and it seems right, just make the play. You will fix it later. Don't go like, because if you say can, that sounds to me like you're sort of like, well, I don't think this would really work, but do you guys? Like, I guess if you guys say it will, then we'll try it. That's a terrible place to be coming from. I mean, I'll give you an example. So TSM, for example, I've watched all these TSM Legends episodes because to me, they're like porn. Like, I've already said on Twitter, my favourite character is Reggie. As soon as he appears, I, like, crack open a beer, I sit back with some popcorn, I'm like, let's just see what he's going to tell him now. I hope he takes over as the coach. Please take over as the coach. He finally did eventually. I got that would he, will he, won't he, love Sonori. It finally took place. They got together. He's the coach again. So, no, here's the story, Monty. What tilts me about that show, though, is after every game, so they're showing you, like, sections of the game, and you even see what's going on, and what happens in the games is they're fucking up the macro, they're making terrible decisions, they're doing bad Baron fights, they're doing stupid scenarios where they throw the game away from a lead. They do all this stuff, right? And every game they lose, Monty, it's the same story. They come back into the locker room, right? Not a locker room, it's like just a fucking room you practice in. And the first thing all of them say is like, oh, I totally know why we lost that game. I know everything we did wrong. Like, fuck off. Fuck off. You know now that you lost because the game just told you it was wrong. Are you mentally deficient? You didn't know at the time. That's why you never made the correct fucking macro decision. That is so... that's like that famous scenario. Okay, there's a famous scenario in Zen where someone says like, if your glass is full, then you can't like learn anything new, because the idea is you have to be empty to something. You have to know that there's space to learn something to be able to learn it. If you already know, well then what's the person going to teach you? Like, what if the coach just said, yeah, actually at this point in the game you made a wrong decision? You're like, yeah, no. Well, brilliant. Yeah, well, we're not going to learn anything, are we then? If you know, then why are you doing it wrong? I don't get it, Monty, because here's the funny thing. Like, okay, that yellow star scenario, I gave you a theory on that, right? I didn't say I know. I have some information that seems suggestive, but if someone presented some new information, like if they said, oh, actually, Rainover was surprisingly communicative and he used to give these calls that the yellow star used to then trigger off, I'd be like, okay, now I've learned something. But if I decided I knew that already and was going to ignore all information to the count, I can never improve my position from there. But that's every Western team. They all know. They all know exactly what they did wrong and why they lost the game.
Well, and that's what also, as a coach, was one of the most frustrating things to get through, is that the players don't want to do the work to improve a lot of the time. And you get a lot of pushback because they will reduce the games at all times. And you've heard every pro player do this. We've discussed this on the show before, where they'll say like, oh, we did that, that's why we lost the game. And they don't rewatch it. They're resistant to actually seeing their play again, or to reviewing their own play and sort of doing the horrible grunt work of watching themselves lose games, which obviously sucks and makes you mad, and you have a natural aversion to doing that, or at least most people do. Yeah. But they don't want to go back and do the minutia work of improving very slowly but systematically as to what they're going to do with their play. And then you end up in situations where they just don't improve. And I think that's one of the things that the Korean players culturally have an advantage in, is that the idea of reflection and self-improvement through practice and attention to detail is there within the society itself.
I mean, one area where that was amazing to me was, I don't know if I've mentioned it on Somebody Inside, but I know I mentioned it in like an interview or something, or maybe it was I think it might have been a Thorin's Thoughts, was this perfect example of this. I saw the difference between a coach's mind and a player's mind was when, after he'd left TSM, before he did that Summoning Insight episode with us, Loco Doco did an AMA. And in the AMA, someone asks Loco Doco, like, how did Bjergsen do in 1v1s, like mid lane and the scrims in Korea, because they want to know, like, how does he stack up against, Pawn, Faker, these sorts of people. And what's interesting is Loco says, like, oh, well, he did well, but early on, certain people, like Pawn, for example, he was always losing to these people in the 1v1s, and they were, like, better than him, but he adapted, and he got better as the bootcamp went on. Dyrus then pops in. Dyrus, someone who's played longer than anyone in Western League of Legends as a top pro. Massive experience, been to every Worlds, every split final of LCS. So by the logic of amazing, he has all the experience you could ever want. Dyrus pops in and says, like, sort of questions Lokodok, like, what do you mean? Like, no, Bjergsen wasn't losing the 1v1s. Like, even the games he was losing was just because the jungler was always better there, was always pressuring more. And then, well, here's what's great. Lokodoko responds, right? And what he essentially says, the gist of it is, well, no, actually, the reason why the jungler was there every time in an inopportune scenario for Bjergsen is because the other mid laner set up the waves and communicated to his jungler, like, you can come at this point in time and it'll be ready for you to do the gank. And so here's what's funny. Dyrus just looked at the last instance. So he obviously saw, oh, it's 1v1, and then Bjergsen's doing okay in CS, and then suddenly the jungler comes out, kills him. That's why. It's because the jungler was there. And what he didn't realize is, it's everything except the last instance that you needed to learn and adapt to. If you just keep thinking, well, our jungler needs to be there, you'll never be able to counter that, because you'll never have done the thing, you'll never notice what they're setting up, you'll never be setting up a counter yourself. That's like, you've reduced it to the point where actually, even though you're right, if that thing didn't happen, you wouldn't lose that scenario. You have understood almost nothing of what set up that scenario. And I realize everyone's going to cry now that I've like bagged on Dyrus. That's just a fact, mate. He didn't have any understanding of that specific scenario. And by the way, he's not a mid laner, so I don't expect him to.
Right. And that's the thing, is that they'll point to, that's a perfect example, is they'll point to, they say, well, we lost this team fight, or we lost because of this gank, and then we overcommitted here, etc. But they don't go back and look at how that really occurred in the first place, or the myriad factors. I mean, League of Legends is a very complicated game with a lot of moving parts. And sometimes something that's done 3 minutes earlier caused you to lose a flash, which then set up this play way later on down the game. And this gank then set up like a dragon that set them on an early road to 5 dragons. Like, it's not, you can't just paint it so easily. And it requires a lot of diligence and effort to go through and really learn. And sometimes I think that's like lacking, or the will to improve just isn't. I don't see it as much in Western players.
And I think these Western players are extremely naive if they think SK Telecom sit around and go, well, we lost the game because you actually flashed at the wrong time at 38 minutes. Like, no, they talk about everything that led up to that point in time.
Yeah. And I can tell you that because I see the way that these teams... I've been in Korean gaming houses and environments, and I see the way they react. Right? Like, I see the way they scrim. I think it's different.
Sure. So, okay. In LCK, Rox Tigers continue to win every single game. Has anything changed about them as a team?
No, I don't think anything is going to change until the meta changes, because they're really strong in this current meta. Whether or not that's going to translate, if Peanut ever has to become like a tanky jungler, I think that's the big question mark for them. But he's so good in this meta with this champion pool that it's going to be really hard to beat them.
You know, last year, because of what happened to GE Tigers at IEM, everyone is... It feels like there's an undercurrent on Reddit where they all want to go, just because a team's dominating Korea, don't think they'll do that well in the West. Here's what's great. I realise, okay, Rox Tigers won't be at IEM, but it's very likely they're going to be at MSI, obviously. So if Rox Tigers go to MSI, anyone who thinks there's a chance what happened at IEM last year will happen, just fucking prepare your asshole right now, because they had Heojong on the team there. Remember what happened when Dandy was on that Samsung White, where he abused every Western jungler? The way Peanut plays right now in LCK, he's going to destroy all the Western junglers. They're going to get utterly and it's going to be from like minute 1 onwards. He's going to be in their jungle, fucking them up, killing them. Like, it's going to be a nightmare for these guys. What do you think?
I think, like I said, as long as the meta doesn't change. Last year, one of the problems for the Rox Tigers was not only their loss at IEM, but subsequently the changes to Cinderhulk really threw them for a loop. So they've got that issue, I would say, to contend with potentially. You know, they're not really in the clear at this point in time as far as patches go. We just frankly don't know how that's going to work out for them.
Monte, we live in a world where SK Telecom lost a game to Afrika Freaks with Lyra carrying from the jungle on Graves.
Yeah,
Explain this world to me. What is this world, Monte?
Bengi is just sort of useless right now. He doesn't... In a jungle carry meta, which is not something that SK Telecom has really ever faced before. We've never had a meta in League of Legends where you could carry this hard out of the jungle, where we've had high damage carries like Kindred and Graves, Nidalee, Rumble now be able to carry, and that's not really something Bengi has ever done. So
he's trying, right? He's trying to make the Graves work.
I mean, he plays Graves. I wouldn't say he carries with it, right? He's just not that kind of player. So I think that in the next patch in 6.3, now that Gragas is going to be an option again and he can play, he has another jungler to add to his pool. I think SKT will do better in the next patch. But yeah, they just... When you're trying to play against carry junglers, and Lyra is very good mechanically, and he's always been a good jungler, and he's always been very aggressive. And so trying to play against guys like Chaser and Lyra and Peanut in this meta is just a nightmare for a jungler like Bengi.
Has anything happened to Faker?
No, Faker still has like the highest damage per minute in the league. He's been doing really well.
Does the team play around him well?
Well, when he plays Corki, they do. They've also been playing around Bang a lot this season. Now, SKT, it should be mentioned, they should have 2-0'd that series. They had game 2 well in hand, and then they started face-checking stuff and throwing the game, which is weird and uncharacteristic of them. That was a bit surprising, but maybe I think they overestimated themselves in game number 2, but that game was like a 99% lock at a win before they threw it.
Okay. What do you make, though, of KT dropping a game to CJ?
CJ's a weird team. They look better and better as time goes on, and Mad Life is having an extremely good season so far, and Kramer has actually really stepped up. And they play around Kramer really well, so they'll just play like 4 tanks and Kramer, but all the plays are always made around Mad Life. Untara has also been getting better as the season progresses and diversifying his champion pool onto more carry top laners. So that's been nice for CJ too. A lot of teams have actually dropped games to CJ, so it's not that unusual. CJ is going to be probably a very threatening team in the second half of the season when they get BDD and they get Daydream.
But I mean, when you consider that obviously a lot of what defined KT's style last split was when they got Peekaboo, that turned everything around, they became way better. What do you think? Because obviously everyone still gives massive plaudits to Scott. He's playing very, very well. Some days still good, but he's maybe not like the super hard carry all the time anymore. What do you think the problem is with the team that stops them being like the clear second best team?
Somebody's been dying in a lot of 1v1s recently, which is odd. So that's holding them back just a little bit. Fly, I think the biggest problem with KT is, and I say problem, I mean, this is a team we're talking about that's 5-3 right now, so it's not like they're doing terribly. They have had somewhat limited strategies. Like we see Fly on Lux a lot. His Zillion has been banned out in a lot of their games, so he hasn't been able to play that. He just Lux TF. He hasn't had Victor. He hasn't had the biggest champion pool, and they have tended to play sort of one style. And I think part of that is that Kindred has been banned due to bugs, so Score can't play Kindred right now. But Fly also just hasn't. He has not been improving as the season has gone on. He's remained pretty much the same, and I think that's held him back from being a truly top-tier team. Also, replacing Peekaboo with Hachani was not really an upgrade for them. I mean, Hachani's been doing okay, but he's not Peekaboo.
You did watch that Immortals Cloud9 game from the other week, right?
Yes.
So I have a question for you. It's rare I ask you, Monte, about builds or that sort of thing, but one of the most cancer things I've ever seen was that scenario where Cloud9 had like blown most of their abilities. So Wildturtle and Callista jumped in by himself 1v3, but because he had Sterax, Moore, and then like Braum, fucking Lux.
Oh, I mean,
because he had everything on him, he was like unkillable. Like they got him super low and then instantly was back up again. It was absolute. It was the nightmare to watch.
Well, the big problem right now is Maw of Malmortius. That item is really overpowered. And
isn't this going to make it super hard to burst down the AD carry?
Yes, it's stupid. And it's so good on Callista, who has such great sustained team fight damage, like damage over the course of a team fight. And it's just like the extra damage and lifesteal that you get from Maw of Malmortius when you have it combined with the Runan's Hurricane and everything like that is just disgusting. So on Callista, when you have this Runan's Hurricane AD carry, you just end up being super unkillable, and it's a big problem. And it's a problem on a lot of champions, actually. It's a big problem on Graves, too, even though he doesn't build the Hurricane.
Like, this is one of the reasons why I've been campaigning again that Forgiven has to play Callista. Because I told him, like the whole thing of Callista to me is I've never thought Callista was like as broken as people make out. I think what they do is they just used to pick the game where it carries. But the thing about Callista, like you're saying, is you have to be alive a long time in the team fight to get all this mad damage off. If people just fuck you up instantly, well, that's over, you're gone. But you add in this item and now it's even more likely you're going to survive enough time to do this mad damage.
Yeah, and of course the combination with Sterix too. You get low, you have just extreme tankiness at that point in time, and then extreme sustain, so you can get yourself right back up and into the fight. It's a dumb combination. It needs to be nerfed.
See, poor Woong. If he was around now, he'd be in his prime again. Tank items. Let's go, boys. Stay alive in that team fight. Caitlyn's still viable.
Yeah.
Okay.
The double problem with that is because it's when Callista gets low that she gets all this lifesteal sustain, right? Because normally by the time Callista gets that low, you say, okay, why is Callista so low? And the two answers are Callista has been caught out somewhere on the map, or all of the cooldowns on the enemy team are up.
Yep.
So there is no more crowd control to stop Callista at that point in time. So there's no way to stop her from just life stealing via auto attacks back to full HP. Yep. Stupid. It's just dumb. That shouldn't be allowed to happen. Okay,
what do you think of the fact that Longzhu used what's now the standard lineup, the Expression Chaser Coco line, and they just 2-0'd SKT?
Convincing wins. I think Longzhu Gaming is looking better and better. Chaser had a super good series against SKT. I was impressed as usual with his level of play. It seems like he actually has a lot more synergy with Coco now, which is nice. I think it may have just taken time. Expression played well. I want to see more Crash personally because I find him very intriguing as a rookie player. But if Chaser's playing that well, it's hard to justify putting Crash in.
The interesting thing about this season for Longzhu for me is that Coco obviously spent season 5 just like hard carrying all these games, being an absolute monster. In this season, he does like good damage, he plays smart, but it feels like he's like one of the more supportive elements of the team now. Doesn't feel like he carries very often.
Yeah, he hasn't had good like LeBlanc games or anything. His Jace games have been good, but those were more towards the beginning of the season rather than recently, right? Let me just take a look at his stats real quick. I don't think he's that high in terms of damage. He
doesn't get that many kills.
Damage
he does damage, but he doesn't get mad kills for sure.
Right, and you're absolutely right. He used to get a lot of kills, but he was also the main focus of CJ because he was like the only carry. Yeah, Coco's like way down there. Obviously, he hasn't played all the games. He's only played 14 games, but he's got fewer than half the kills. So, for example, Kuro has played 19 games, and Kuro has 82 kills. He's the top of the league. Kramer has played 21 games and has 80 kills. Coco only has 39 kills, but he's played 14 games, so lower than average for Coco for sure. And let's compare that to last season, actually, for curiosity's sake.
Must be way higher than that.
Remember, we're only at the halfway point through the season, so it's going to be a little bit different. But let me just look. Coco led the league in kills at 199. Now, that was over 46 games, so we're talking about 32 more games that he played in the regular season. But if we do the math on that real quick, so he was getting, at this point in time, he was getting an average of 4.3 kills per game. And currently, but
it's 3 point something. It's on the Wikipedia, like they have the KDA averages.
It's not KDA, I'm just talking about kills.
All right, just kills.
So 4.3 kills per game on average. He's down this season at 2.7. So it's a pretty significant difference.
But admittedly, he does. He just plays like Lux, Lissandra.
He's been playing some poke champions too. He was also highest in damage per minute in the summer season at 674. And right now, his damage per minute is... Oh, he's up there, too. He's number 3, actually, at 602, but he's down 74 damage per minute. So, it's not that he's doing badly. It's just he's not carrying quite as hard by most metrics that we would look at.
How strong as an overall region do you actually think Korea is at the moment? Like, once we get outside of Rocks, what is it like as a region, do you think?
I think it's very strong right now. I think a lot of the teams are quite good. So... It should be interesting to see how SKT does. Obviously, looking at what's coming up from China, like it's going to be fun to see Chao Gu at IEM because they are 7-0 now and doing extremely well. They've dropped games at this point, but they haven't actually lost a best of 3 to anybody. Sure. This week they played OMG. Oh, they lost 1 game to Vici.
They've only lost 1 game ever.
Yeah, to Vici. So, but they also have the easier group in LPL, but they're starting to play cross groups a little bit, and they lost a game to Vici, who is 3-4 in best of 3s. So we'll see. Once they hit like Royal, that'll be a really interesting matchup. Or EDG.
Plus, the weird thing about Chao Gu is that when they brought in all these like they got Uzi as a big name signing, they got all these like sub players that people have heard of, Dade, etc. But what's funny is they don't use any of them. Basically, they use Uzi every now and then. But because the team's been going so well,
1 game this season actually.
Because it's been going so well, they just stick with the old lineup. So actually, it's the same team.
Yeah,
Have they changed from the flawed team you thought they were before?
I think they look better. I like the teleport use they've been doing out of the mid lane. They certainly play less crazy than they used to. I don't know. I mean, I think they're fine.
Okay. Right. Okay, I've got a question for you. As of right now, you have to guess. At the end of the season, okay, we're assuming Rocks will still be the best, blah blah blah, unless the meta changes. Who will be the second best team? Who would you put your money on right now?
I think SKT will get it together.
Okay.
I think that not the current patch, but the upcoming patch is going to be advantageous to SK Telecom, and then they will slowly make the changes they need because they have all the pieces, right? They know what they're doing. Eventually, they're going to be able to bounce back.
Okay. Right. On that note, something alpha draft. It's the end of the show.